for the last 2 years. And those asylum seekers or economic migrants who make it from Sudan to the UK have a 99% chance of being given leave to remain. So I spent several hours talking to immigration chiefs here in Benghazi on the east side of Libya. The Libyan National Army has a very good grip on the immigration problem, albeit fighting against a huge crisis with limited resources. There is a very, very clear process of giving people proper health checks, the life-saving care that they need, and then working out where it is exactly that they've come from. Their message to the UK is that you are fueling this problem. You are effectively advertising a great new life for people from sub-Saharan Africa. They actually said, you know, what do you think happens when a guy from Sudan comes up through Libya and makes his way all the way to the UK and gets put in a luxurious hotel and provided with everything? And make no mistake, it is a perilous journey. We see it from the end point. We see the channel crossing as the dangerous bit. But actually where these journeys begin is in the hot desert. Many, many tens of kilometres have to be covered on foot by these migrants. And as many as 1 in 4 do not make it. That means bodies in the desert. The Libyan authorities are having to recover bodies in the desert. About the UK and how much awareness. Please understand the scale of what we are dealing with here with very, very limited resources. Once again, you know, people come in from charities, from NGOs, they use warm words, and the authorities here told me the only thing that we ever get is maybe a few toothbrushes and some nappies for the babies.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Afternoon, I'm Duncan Barkes. It's Talk New Year's Eve 2025. I'm here through until 7. Thank you as always to Petri Hoskin, a glorious queen of a broadcaster. I'm Duncan. I'm here through until 7 p.m. on Talk, the place where the nation comes to talk. 0344 499 1000. I'll tell you what, there's so much stuff here that I want to go through over the next 3 hours. I really don't know where to start, but I will start somewhere. A little bit later on, we're going to look at this idea that was floated by the Sussex Police Crime Commissioner, a woman called Katie Bourne, about tagging asylum seekers. I'll be honest with you, I can't see there being any issue with this. We'll look at this in more detail a little bit later on, but first off, what we tend to find at this time of the year is we tend to find that research companies and polling companies go out and ask people questions, because that's what they do to earn a few quid. And one of the most interesting things I've seen in the last few days has been the findings in the last 12 hours of YouGov. You will have heard about YouGov, they're a polling company, and they asked people what their most important issues are, the stuff that really matters to them in terms of the stuff that affects all of us, the stuff that politicians have to make decisions on, the stuff that we elect politicians basically to sort out. That's kind of what it's all about, isn't it? And I've got the findings here, and I see, if I was a betting man, and I'll be honest with you, I am. I live literally a stone's throw away from Goodwood, the racecourse, and I always have a flutter on the GGs, and sometimes I'm successful, sometimes I'm not. So I do like a bet. I would have said this is a no-brainer. The answer simply has to be immigration. But it's not. Immigration comes in second. The most important issue for people at this precise moment in time is the economy. Now, if you think about it, that's probably about right. And that's gone up 2 percentage points since 7 days ago, when they last asked people, what's the most important issue to you? It's the economy. Now, if you think about it, it makes perfect sense, because since we've had this Labour government since July 2024, we have had 2 disastrous budgets. And I say that because if you run a business or you work for a private sector business or an organisation, you know, this budget has not been good. You will have heard people here on Talk who work in the hospitality sector, people who have been on this station today talking about pubs and how a pub a day closed down last year and how they're looking to 2026 with fear because they might not be able to keep their pub open. It's not just pubs, it's any kind of business. And, you know, the budgets that Rachel Reeves puts together, presumably on the back of a fag packet, because they've not really worked that well so far, have been disastrous for our economy. And just hear me out for a second, okay? Because I'm not an economist, but you don't need to be the sharpest tool in the box to realise if you say to business, we're going to whack up the minimum wage. So we've had two budgets from Rachel Reeves, right? In both those budgets, the minimum wage has gone up, which is kind of fair in some ways because the cost of living has gone up. So I talk to people who've got businesses and they go, yeah, I kind of get it, kind of understand about the minimum wage, right? Then you've got the employer's national insurance rate that was hiked up massively in Reeves's first budget. That has massively damaged the private sector. In so many ways. They're not recruiting, therefore they're not contributing to growth of the economy, all right? You don't have to be Einstein to see where the problem is. Then, if that wasn't enough, you've got Angela Rayner, remember her? Deputy Prime Minister, Housing Secretary, got a little bit confused over how stamp duty works. Angela Rayner put together her employment rights bill that's still going through Parliament. It's going back and forth between the Commons and the Lords. Now, it's been diluted a little bit, but the Employment Rights Bill makes it really, really hard if you're an employer, right, to get rid of people who are rubbish. And that sounds really brutal, but if you run a small organisation, let's say you've got a business of 6 people, and in that business you've got somebody you've hired who frankly can't do the job, you should be able to get rid of them, right? Because you're carrying a weight. It's a cost that's not contributing to your business. And the Employment Rights Bill that's about to come into law makes it really hard to get rid of people. So all of that together makes it really hard to run a business, harder than it's ever been, I would argue. And that's why, it's one of the reasons why our economy is in trouble. So to me, it's not a massive surprise where we find ourselves with this YouGov survey where most people are going, the economy, 55% of people, is the biggest issue for them. And if you're a lefty and you're listening and watching this, I mean, there might be some of you there, this is the issue, right? You should be supporting a really vibrant and robust economy because that means there's more money coming into the Treasury in taxation. That means that you can have marvellous public services without any form of reform. You know, we will have plenty more money if we had a great economy. That means that you can, you know, chuck millions of pounds of taxpayers' money at a latest pet project. So even if you're an old-fashioned lefty, you've got to acknowledge growth comes from the private sector, not the public sector, and that's why you should be doing everything possible to support the private sector. But instead, we have a government who seems to hate the private sector and business. A little bit of a rant there, but for good reason. That's why I think people are starting to realise that the economy of this country is in a really dire place. Roll into that the fact that our debt, in terms of how much we pay in debt interest alone, not the money we've borrowed, but debt interest, so this is the interest that you accrue on your credit card, right? At the moment, stands at over £100 billion a year. Should we just pause for a second and just let that sink in? 100 billion quid plus a year is what we pay in our debt interest alone. That is unsustainable. So that's my take on the economy. Other stuff in the list: immigration in second place, health in third place, fourth place defence. I would argue that needs to go up. More people need to realise that politically, when it comes to defence, we are in a really bad situation. You know, China's not our friend, right? Russia's not our friend. You know, there's a story a couple of days ago, a Russian spy ship out in the North Irish Sea. We need a lot more investment in defence. People need to understand that the defence of this nation is paramount. For far too long, we have lived off the dividend of the Cold War. Oh, the Cold War's over, everything's going to be fine. Well, look around the world today, it ain't fine. Welfare, crime and housing are also on this list. So I've given you my take this afternoon here on Talk. You tell me this afternoon, 0344 499 1000. For you, what is the most important issue? What's your top priority for 2026? What's the stuff that you want to see this government deal with, invest in, be robust about? 0344 499 1000 for your calls, your WhatsApp messages, and of course your voice notes. If you're a little bit old school, and that's all right because I am, the people behind the glass here will tell you I'm very old school. I need bits of paper in front of me and I even use a pen. You can text if you're a little bit old school, 87222. Start your message with the word talk. I want you to tell me, what's your top priority for 2026? Is it immigration? Is it health? Is it defence? Is it crime? I was in my local co-op earlier today getting some essentials for New Year's Eve, basically wine, and I'm always staggered to see packets of sausages in a Perspex box which have got a GPS tracker attached to them because people are shoplifting bangers. £4 worth of sausages. So crime is a massive issue. It's a real life issue. 0344 499 1000 for you. What is your top priority for 2026? Let's get a view on this. Lord Robert Hayward is a Conservative peer and a pollster. He joins us on Talk. Afternoon.
Good afternoon, Duncan.
Robert, many thanks for your time on this New Year's Eve. This makes quite interesting reading in terms of the issues that matter to people, and what people are saying is the thing that needs sorting the most. You heard what I said there. Is any of the findings a surprise to you?
No, the particular surprise actually is that immigration has for a number of months been the number one issue.
Yeah.
Because for most Western democracies, if you go back over the last 5 or 10 years, the economy has been the main issue. It normally is because it's pocket issues for the ordinary individuals. If I can just clarify, because you use percentages in terms of main issues, when people are asked in that survey and most other surveys by polling companies, they're allowed to choose up to 3 subjects.
Right.
So although you've got immigration and the economy at 50%, people might be saying, well, that's a bit odd. How on earth do you finish up with those sorts of figures? It's because they are allowed to give, and you can see on the screen now, it says please tick up to 3. And that's how they come to the figures. But as you can see there, immigration through the summer this year rose above the economy, but the economy has now moved back. That probably coincides, as you indicated, with the budget at the end of the year, and therefore people are much more conscious again of tax issues.
Yeah, and we've had headlines recently about, I mean, there's one today about how Britain is bottom of the G7 when it comes to investment. We also have OBR predictions of growth for the next couple of years, bumping around 1%. And then you have Rachel Reeves going, well, it's still growing. And most people go, yeah, but it's 1%, that's nothing. Let me just ask you about the immigration findings here, because it does seem to me that if immigration is just one issue, we should probably break that down, shouldn't we, into illegal immigration, i.e. people arriving on boats across the channel, and people who have come to this country legitimately. But it looks like from these findings it's all bundled into one.
Yes, it is. And you're right that it would make sense if they had the two issues separated. But people who are looking at the chart that you've put on the screen will also notice that while the economy is rated at 55, there is also the option in relation to tax and pensions. So in some subjects, in fact, the issues are split out into different categories. And in some of the surveys that people undertake, there is the cost of living as well as a different category. I would probably just lump them all in together, but so quite a lot of pollsters don't.
And you're a veteran pollster, and you've been knocking around the world of politics, I say that with respect, for many, many years. Just give our listeners and viewers on Talk this afternoon a sense of how does it work from your perspective in politics. Will Downing Street be looking at this and thinking, oh no, we need to start doing stuff in January to reassure people about the economy? Will they take note of this? How does it work?
I think you and I and the vast majority of the population would have hoped that it doesn't take an opinion poll in late December to actually make people think, oh, we better do something about immigration, about the economy, about defence.
Yeah.
One would hope that they'd been thinking about it, and they will have been thinking about it for a lot longer than just these last few weeks. It's government, obviously a fairly complex matter. Certain issues, as you can see again from that graph, go up and down in terms of the importance that the public give them. You can see at the right-hand end of that picture that health has leapt up, and that's natural at this time of year because of all the concerns about flu epidemics and the like. So some things fluctuate, but government departments ought to be paying attention to them over a long period, not over a short period.
Yeah, I mean, you make an interesting point there. You would hope, we would all hope, that the government kind of has a handle on most of the things that matter to people, but it does seem to me this current administration is very guilty of knee-jerking, hence some of the U-turns we've seen over the last several months. Is that a fair comment?
It is a fair comment, and to be honest, I think the current government has got its messaging all wrong, and some of the polling shows that. Their messaging says they want to take on reform, they want to take on this organisation or that particular point of view. What the public are now seeking a year and a half into an administration is an identification of what they have achieved and what they aim to achieve in the coming year. And I would be in a state of total despair if Keir Starmer's message, New Year's message, doesn't include some very clear, we are going to achieve X or Y in 2026. One of the successes of Kemi Badenoch over the last few weeks is that she has very specifically, starting with her speech at the Tory party conference, actually identified what she wants to do. Yeah. And that has struck a chord with the public and got beyond the rejected brand that was the Conservative, only to some extent, but beyond the rejected brand of the Conservative Party up to 2024.
Yeah, it does feel like Kemi Badenoch has turned a corner in the last 3 to 4 months. Listen, a final question. There's another bit of research out today asking people about 2025 and was it a good or bad year for Brits? It's quite evenly split. But a kind of a rough, if you like, assessment would be older people think it's been quite grim 2025, younger people less so. What would your take be?
It comes as no surprise. Older people are cynical and depressed on a much more regular basis throughout polling, research at all times. It would be a very depressing state of affairs if younger people were not optimistic. I want people to continue to be optimistic. And if I can finish on a light note, you said about polling companies, one or two of the questions that you didn't identify is that at this time of year, polling companies asked people who they thought which of the party leaders would be best at preparing presents or the Christmas lunch, who would be the party leader most likely to stay in the pub till the lunch was ready.
Yeah, we know who that is, don't we?
So whereas for 11 months I spend all my time looking at very sombre questions, at least this time of year you do get some lighter questions as well.
Robert, thank you for your time on this New Year's Eve. All the best for 2026. That's Lord Robert Hayward, Conservative peer and pollster, here on Talk. Let's take a call. This is Ashley in London. Hello, Ash.
Hello, Duncan. How are you doing?
Yeah, very well. What would you like to say?
A couple of things. I was going to say, firstly, the correlation between migration and finances is no surprise it's a mix of the two, because in reality, if we had lots of money and we didn't have all this debt, the amount of migration that we have, immigration into the country, and the cost of it would not be as much of a headline as what it is at the moment. Because what we're seeing is that we're seeing people can't afford to put food on the table, people can't get homes, yet we're able to find this money somehow to put up these migrants. But if that wasn't an issue of funds, it probably would be a lesser thing than it is now. But what we've got, I mean, I'll give you a great example. Yeah, my friend has a large recruitment company, and from the initial budget with the employers and now the minimum wage, and they take on quite a few apprentices, and all that stopped, right? You know, so I can't see in this coming year the economic side of it getting better, because we've got a government in place that actually don't appear to understand basic economics.
Yeah, I think you're right with that assessment, and a chancellor who went into government, it seems to me, without a plan, despite spending many months on the run-up to that general election trying to reassure private business, the public sector, that she was on their side. In her first budget, she basically, well, it was a U-turn. I mean, that was such an unfriendly budget when we talk about private enterprise or the private sector. Ash, I appreciate your call. Thank you. Got to move it on. A few more messages here. This one from John. Immigration is my top priority because it affects everything, the NHS, housing and the economy. One here from June who says, I don't believe polls. I think they're made up bias. Neither my husband and I have ever been asked. I did a poll of my own family and friends. Have you ever asked a question for a poll? Have you ever been asked a question by a polling company? Not one person said yes. That's the kind of poll I want. One more here. This is Nick. Immigration is the only issue. Thousands more people means less likely you can see a GP, longer waiting times at A&E, crowded roads, shoplifting, violence, theft, rapes and assault. It wasn't like this in the 1980s. And who voted for all of this? Asked Nick. Well, I would say most people who put Tony Blair's government into power in 1997. 0344 499 1000. More of your calls on this. What's your top priority for 2026? Is it immigration? Is it the economy? Is it defence? I want to talk to people who believe that when it comes to defence, we have got a lot of catching up to do. You can voice note us to that number and WhatsApp as well. The text number is 87222. Start your message with the word talk. Next, we ask the question, what's wrong with tagging asylum seekers? I'm Duncan Barkes, and this is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. It's the home of common sense. I'm Duncan Barkes till New Year's Eve. 0344 499 1000. You want to pick up on anything we're chewing over this afternoon? Let's get you on the air. Call us, WhatsApp us, and send voice notes to that number as well. Asylum seekers should be electronically tagged so they can be tracked. Now, this is a story that broke yesterday, but I genuinely think it's so interesting. This is the Sussex Police Crime Commissioner, Katie Bourne, who suggested this because there's something happening in the area that she represents. She's the Police and Crime Commissioner for Sussex, Katie Bourne. She's proposed that tags are used on male asylum seekers set to be housed at a military training camp in the area. This particular site is Crowborough Training Camp, which is in, I think that's, I'm just working out, that's East Sussex? Is that East Sussex, Crowborough? I think it is. And she's urged the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, to, quote, be bold and use the arrival of 540 asylum seekers at Crowborough Training Camp as a pilot to see if the scheme helps discourage crime. She suggested the move would deter migrants from criminality, whilst also giving them greater freedom to travel further from holding centres and get temporary employment. There has been some reaction to this. We'll get some more thoughts on this in a second from Robert Bates, who's the research director at the Centre for Migration Control. But Rachel Millward, who's the deputy leader of the Green Party, has spoken about this. She said that Katie Bourne should know better in proposing asylum seekers wear electronic tags, given it was under the previous Conservative government that tagging asylum seekers was trialled and found unlawful. Is there any mileage behind this idea, do you think? 0344 499 1000, tagging asylum seekers. I mean, you can make the argument, and I think I'm going to make the argument, which is if you effectively break into this country illegally, which is the view of many people of those who cross the channel in small boats, you're not coming in via a legal route, therefore you are a criminal. And therefore tagging is a perfectly legitimate thing to do. Or does it just sound a bit too sinister, tagging people just because they claim they're freeing some form of persecution? 0344 499 1000 is the number. Let's get a view on this. Robert Bates is the research director at the Centre for Migration Control. He joins us. Hello, Robert.
Afternoon, Duncan.
Thank you for your time on this New Year's Eve. What's your take on this proposal, this idea?
Well, I don't have any qualms about the principle. I don't think it's an invasion of privacy. I think you're absolutely right. These are people that have broken into our country, and therefore they should be treated with some degree of scepticism and as if they were criminals. I'm just concerned about whether this actually would go far enough, and if we ended up with a situation where we thought that tagging individuals would solve some of the problems that we are seeing when it comes to crime, I think we would actually find that it doesn't quite go far enough. I'm much more in favour of detaining those that come into the country illegally, putting them behind fences, making sure that they don't actually leave a vicinity. I think that would do a lot more to clamp down on some of the criminality and social disorder that we are seeing. And of course, we see this from the criminal justice system as it is. What's to stop these individuals cutting off the tags and disappearing into the black economy when we consider that many are actually coming here with the intent of disappearing, and we've seen tens of thousands have just disappeared from the asylum system. I don't think that tagging them would in and of itself deter them from doing that. And I think but I'm very happy that the conversation is going in the direction where we think to ourselves, how do we actually stop some of the social problems that are happening? Because it's very, very clear now that there is a big problem with criminality amongst some asylum seekers, and certain nationalities that come across in those small boats are overrepresented in crime statistics. So I think we need to have a conversation about that, but I don't know if tagging them actually quite goes far enough. So the objections from Rachel Millward, she would object. She seems to object to anything that represents any semblance of border control. That we can discard those as sort of witterings from the fringes of British politics. So I think most people would actually realise that the money that we're currently spending on the asylum system would be far better spent just creating and upgrading our detention estate. It's crazy that we only have about 2,000 places at the moment in immigration detention facilities. Why aren't we looking to increase that 5-6-fold? I think that would be a much better approach to and much better use of taxpayers' money.
I think I agree with you. I think tagging does not go far enough. But I'm going to take a step back from this, just from the point of view that we find ourselves in this situation, a situation that we've never been in before in this country, right? I know East Sussex relatively well. I can understand, and I know where Crowborough is as well, I can understand why people will be thinking, do you know what? It's not ideal tagging people. They shouldn't be here in the first place. They've effectively broken into the country. However, if they are here, tagging them at least gives us some form of control. Could you see that? Could you be sympathetic towards that view? It's a little bit more protective of the general public, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I agree completely that it's better than the current situation. My concern, if this was to be adopted, and I can't imagine the Labour Party will do this, would be that it would kind of become...
Well, let me interrupt you for a second. I can imagine that they would do, because they're struggling so much in the polls at the moment, right? Any quick fix that might see a poll bump, right, and just go, oh, actually, we can be seen to be really tough here on illegal migration. Let's tag them up. I could see Shabana Mahmood going, well, why not try and make this work? Because they need all the help they can get, right?
And they may very well do next year when the situation continues to deteriorate and people realise this government doesn't have a clue what they're doing. But I don't think it is the end goal that we should be looking for as a solution to this problem. And I'm worried that if we sort of introduce a half measure that is somewhat better than the current dire status quo, it then becomes solidified as the established approach with which to deal with this situation. I think it would maybe therefore detract from the much bigger conversation that needs to be had about those detention facilities. But of course, it is far better than what we currently have, which is individuals in hotels just wandering in and out, or even worse, in houses of multiple occupancy where you don't have even a security guard keeping tabs on where individuals are.
Or Rob, even worse, potentially in some brand new, newly built council houses, which is a story that's knocking around today. The idea we're going to build some council houses for asylum seekers because that way we don't have to put them up in hotels. I mean, you couldn't make this stuff up, could you?
No, and I think this is the problem. The government doesn't seem to recognise that, yes, hotels are annoying, and yes, they do cost more, and people would rather that they didn't exist, but they would also rather people weren't in the country in the first place, and that is the actual nub of this issue. People don't want tens of thousands of individuals breaking into the country every single year, unvetted, nothing known about them, given free rein to wander around their community. So the hotels, I think the Labour Party have kind of misdiagnosed actually what the concern is here amongst the British public, and they just think it's this sort of fiscal rectitude that the public want to see and the money spent a bit better. No, they just don't want the individuals in the country in the first place. And actually, when you have a large sort of centre like the hotel, you are somewhat able to keep tabs on where these individuals are going. And when we see reporting on crimes taking place, we're able to decipher when an individual sort of reported to live in X hotel. We can say, oh, this is likely an illegal migrant. Whereas if they're in an HMO or a house, one of these new built houses on a sort of random street or in a leafy suburb, it makes it a lot harder to actually decipher what these individuals are and what their immigration status is. So I think this is really going to hurt the British public, especially when we've seen in the last couple of days as well, you know, this news that 900,000 sort of migrants are in social housing across the UK. That includes legal, of course, but there's a growing sense that actually the system as a whole isn't working for the British public. And I think if these plans are put in place, it would just further cement this sense of a two-tier system in this country where British people on housing lists are having to play second fiddle and wait for asylum seekers to be giving housing ahead of them.
It genuinely is insulting to people who are waiting for a council property. It really is. Just give me a final take on 2025 as a year when we talk about illegal migration and where we might be heading in 2026. I can't see anything changing. Can you?
I think it's going to get a lot worse. I think the Labour government have run out of road now. All their little gimmicks have proved themselves to be utter failures, and I think 2026 is going to be a bumpy year for illegal migration, sadly. Yeah,
they have run out of gimmicks, haven't they? Just humour me for a second. Go through all of the gimmicks we've had in the last year. I mean, we've had let's bung a load of money to France and say, can you do something about people on the beaches? That didn't seem to work. We then had this ludicrous one in, one out thing, which no one really understood, which certainly hasn't worked. What else have I missed?
Smash the Gangs, which was dropped around about June, the big one. That was their centrepiece. We've had plans to sort of confiscate dinghies in German warehouses, which I think got popped. So that's
worked really well.
Big win as well. Yeah. So and then we've had Keir Starmer desperately running around the Balkans trying to renegotiate offshoring deals. We've ended up with one cursory deal at the moment with North Macedonia, which will amount to absolutely nothing as well. And most of the other countries in that region of Europe have said to Keir Starmer to tell him to go and do one because they don't want any part of this problem as well. So I don't really know what they do now because they got rid of Rwanda when they first came in. That was a big central centrepiece of actually how to go about solving this problem because it was a deportation strategy and a deterrent. They've gone away with that and they've got nothing left to do. They've got no more legislative tweaks. They've got no more little side deals that they can do. I really think next year is going to be humiliating for them.
I think you're right. Rob, thanks for your time on this New Year's Eve. Keep up the good work. That's Robert Bates, Research Director, the Centre for Migration Control here on Talk. You want to pick on anything that Rob said, 0344 499 1000 for your calls. We'll get as many calls on the air as we can. You can WhatsApp to that number and you can voice note as well. This is Perry who's voice noted us to give his thoughts on the YouGov poll we talked about earlier and also his hopes for 2026.
Hello there. I think the main thing for me is still immigration because immigration is putting a terrible burden on the economy. For one reason. Probably the second thing I'm more worried about is war. You know, Keir Starmer said that we should be on a war footing, yet he still wants to allow Ed Miliband to spend £13 billion on heat pump grants. You know, it just doesn't make any sense. Surely that money would be better off going to the military. And also, what a weak, pathetic, useless leader we have. You know, he talks about a war footing, and so what's he do? I know what I'm going to do. I'll cripple the farmers, I'll ruin the economy, I'll shut down oil steel making plants, I will cripple the industry. What a fantastic leader. I mean, whose side is this guy on?
I think that's a very fair question, Perry. Thank you. 0344 499 1000 for your voice note, also your WhatsApp and your calls. Here's a question for you. Here's one to ponder over the next few minutes. Okay, you're sitting at home, you're on your sofa, maybe like me, watching Four in a Bed, my TV guilty pleasure, and all of a sudden you go, I've got a bit of a headache. Oh. I mean, I could take some paracetamol. No, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll go to A&E. What are people up to? We'll get into this in a few moments' time here at Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
I'm Duncan Barkes. This is Talk on New Year's Eve. This is utterly extraordinary. Millions of patients, we're not just talking a handful, are going to accident and emergency, A&E, possibly your local A&E, and they're going and rocking up there with minor ailments, according to new figures. We're not talking about people who are, got a limb hanging off. We're talking about people who rock up with hiccups. Just let that sink in for a second. Hiccups or a headache. Analysis shows that over 5 years, A&E medics have treated nearly 1.9 million cases of headache. I still can't comprehend this. You're sitting at home, you have a headache. Don't you go, I need some paracetamol. I mean, unless you're hungover, right? And you know exactly what the cause is because you're dehydrated. So think about that tomorrow morning. You sit there thinking, I've got a headache. Maybe I've not drunk enough water. I'm dehydrated. Maybe I'm just a little bit tired. Maybe I've been focusing too much. Maybe I need to get my eyes tested because that causes headaches. And most people just go, I'll get a couple of paracetamol, right? But some people go, no, I'm going to go to accident and emergency and waste someone's time. I don't want to sound rude about this, though I am in danger of sounding rude about it. How have we ended up in a situation where people go to A&E for things like headaches or hiccups? Earache accounted for a third of 1 million A&E visits. This is analysis by the Press Association. Other complaints included almost 69,000 people for a blocked nose, 4,200 for hiccups, and I'm sorry to laugh, 290,000 people for constipation. 0344 499 1000 is our number here at Talk. Why are people going to A&E with minor ailments? And what's been your A&E experience? A very timely question as we head into New Year's Eve. I mean, if you spend any time in A&E on a Friday or Saturday night, it is carnage, right? I've done it in the past. I've taken people there, have not been well. It is like, I mean, how can I describe it? It's like Beirut, right? Shows you how old I am. So, A&E, your experiences, but also how have we ended up in a situation where people go there with the hiccups or headache or constipation? Let's get a view on this. Dr. Lawrence Buckman is a retired NHS GP, former chair of the BMA GPs committee. He joins us. Dr. Buckman, good afternoon.
Good afternoon and Happy New Year.
And to you too, thank you for your time on this New Year's Eve. I might have been a little bit flippant there, and please call me out if I've got it wrong, but I mean, some of these numbers just are beyond belief, aren't they?
I'm sad to say they're completely believable. Nothing has changed since I was an A&E doctor a long time ago, and all my time as a GP was involved in answering the phone to people who had these symptoms. But A&E stories go back forever. The only difference is more of us have a telephone now, so more of us can call for an ambulance, or the belief is you can't get help at night without being in A&E, so you go to A&E, but many of the problems that go to A&E actually never need to go anywhere, not any kind of help. As you said, an awful lot of people, Panadol would do it. And yet amongst these cases of people who really haven't got much wrong with them and common sense would stop them, there are people who are afraid of something really serious. And just occasionally that happens. So because we are much more risk averse than we used to be, we are very reluctant to accept a potential life-threatening symptom, which actually isn't that. It isn't a life-threatening symptom. So we misinterpret.
Understood. So this is nothing new, sadly. You mentioned more of us have telephones. We also have a thing called the internet, and you kind of hope that most people would be able to go online, find some information that is, for want of a better description, authorised, you know, comes from a pucker source, and go, oh, that's what I need to do. I need to buy some paracetamol, because if I am on the cusp of having a brain hemorrhage, then I would have these symptoms as well. So clearly I'm not. I'll just pop some pills. So I mean, I'm interested in this. Are people deliberately? I mean, you talked about, you know, people being risk averse. Are people just going now of the mindset, I better get myself checked out just in case? But also coupled with that, do they not understand the realities of the pressures that exist in 2025 and will do in 2026 in accident and emergency units? Why don't they understand?
I think they don't understand because they probably don't use an authorised site like you've described.
Yeah.
They go on YouTube and they find out, and they're always terrible stories. If you look at the papers every day, every major newspaper website has, I had a spot, my GP said nothing, and I'm dying of cancer.
Yeah.
And those stories, I promise you, will be in the papers tomorrow. I don't know which paper, but they'll be there. And you only have to hear that a bit, and you start to believe that little cough turns out to be something really serious.
Yeah. So actually, and I think you've nailed it, and I'm happy to put my hands up here as part of the media. The media does have a part to play. You're absolutely right, because I've seen those stories and I read them, and I do read them because I'm fascinated. But I've also got a bit of my brain that goes, yeah, but that's a rare thing. That's not going to happen to everyone. But you're of the view that some of these scare stories, if I went to my doctor, they told me everything was fine, and then 2 weeks later, half my head fell out, is enough to scare people. All right, that's interesting. How do we change people's perceptions? Well, how do we better educate people then?
Well, ideally, we need to run a campaign of health education for the public. And that hasn't been done seriously since the turn of the century. It hasn't really been done. And governments of all colours have gradually shaved off the money for health education to explain that most coughs don't matter at all, but a few of them are really serious. Most headaches are minor, but a few are really serious. And you can tell the difference between them. But people immediately leap to, I have pain in my chest, it must be a heart attack. And A&E doctors for generations will tell you that the vast majority of people with chest pain are not having any kind of attack, let alone a heart attack.
I've got a message here from Lucy, who sent in a text saying some headaches indicate very serious conditions, brain hemorrhage, for example. Also, many GPs tell patients to go to A&E instead of seeing them. Is that fair comment?
I think both of those are fair comment. There are headaches that are serious, but a doctor can generally tell the difference between them. And if they can't, then they'll tell you to go to A&E just in case. And doctors telling people to go to A&E, you can only do that a little bit before patients don't see you anymore.
Let's bring this full circle. This is New Year's Eve. I mean, I know people who work on the front line in A&Es. They dread this time of year for all kinds of reasons. You know, they say 9 times out of 10, I'm going to try and be respectful. The amateurs are out partying, and then, you know, they have 1 pint more than the 2 that they're used to. They fall off a curbstone, bang their head, and they start clogging up A&E. You can argue that's what A&E is there. But given your opinion and your experience, when should people be going to A&E? Just walk us through a process in an ideal world people should follow before they rock up at A&E at 2 in the morning.
Just think, if something is not working properly, as far as you know, have you tried simple remedies, or is the situation so bad that you don't think there's any time for a simple remedy to work? And if you are afraid, then you call 111, who will help you go through the symptoms and decide whether you should go to A&E. And believe me, 111 will be very risk averse. Or you can manage it yourself. And if you don't like the advice, you can always go to A&E. But what you shouldn't do is go to A&E at the first hint of trouble. I can remember years ago being asked to deliver baby milk at 3 o'clock in the morning, being asked whether someone was pregnant, again in the middle of the night. And also I've had calls about constipation. It's an amazingly common thing for people to go to A&E or to call their GP in the middle of the night with. And those are problems that maybe need a little bit of common sense at times.
Yeah, common sense, some might say, which is in sadly short supply. I've enjoyed the conversation with Dr. Lawrence Buckman. Thank you for joining us on Talk on this New Year's Eve. Dr. Lawrence Buckman, retired NHS GP, former chair of the BMA GPs committee. If you've had an experience of accident and emergency, I'd love to get you on the air over the next hour or so. 0344 499 1000. And you heard there that, and this is interesting because, I mean, I've got one here from Mark in Coventry. In 2009, I went to A&E with a banging headache. It was a brain hemorrhage. So that is a second point that's been made in the last 5 minutes about headaches connected to brain hemorrhages. Right, so where do you stand on this? Do you have sympathy with people who rock up at A&E because they've got a headache and they think there's something wrong with them? Or do you just think, come on, this is common sense. Go online, check out your symptoms, dial 111. Don't clog up A&E. 0344 499 1000 for your calls, your voice notes and your WhatsApps. 87222 is a text number. Start your message with the word talk. We're going to talk about strike action in a few moments' time. It's been an interesting year when we talk about strikes. Today, security guards in Parliament are currently striking. The bin strike in Birmingham next week goes into its second year. Is there an argument to ban certain people from striking? We'll talk about that next here on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
I'm Duncan Barkes. New Year's Eve. This is Talk. More messages coming in. This is Angela on, we ought to call it X these days, but I keep calling it Twitter because I'm old. You find us at talkTV. Afternoon, Duncan. My top concerns, my priorities for 2026, immigration, in brackets, boats and lorries, the cost of living, and the policies of Rachel Reeves, free speech and the disparity between left and right in politics. And lastly, this government is not on the side of the British people. That's Angela. Elsewhere, talking about people going to A&E for things like hiccups and headaches. This is Mary in Canterbury, who says, my daughter is a paramedic and people have to wise up on what to say to get them to come out. Some said they're hemorrhaging and it turns out they've got period pains, and can she bring them sanitary products? They've also gone out to people that have said they have had a heart attack and they want Rennies for indigestion. It's an absolute disgrace that people do this, and they only do it because it's free. Maybe the fakers should be charged £100 if they turn up with earache, etc. Mary, you and I are two peas in a pod, because I have decided that people do not understand the cost of services provided on the NHS. Now, you can argue, right, it's not free because we all pay through it through our taxation, right? But I'm of the view, when you talk about GP's appointments that get missed, if someone has a GP's appointment and they miss it and they don't phone up and go, I can't make it in because my car's broken down or whatever, right, they should be charged for it. It really is that simple. People need to understand the value of some of these services, and I think you're right. You know, if your daughter's a paramedic and someone comes out going, I think I've had a heart attack, can you bring some Rennie, right? Charge them, 150 quid, £200, I don't care. 0344 499 1000 for your thoughts on that. It's been an interesting year when we talk about industrial action or strikes. Now, I'm old enough, because I'm an old man, well, a middle-aged man, to remember the print unions striking in 1984, 1985, the miners' strike. And I'm also, my memory is still relatively good, to look back over the last 12 months. We had the doctors striking. Today, New Year's Eve, we've got security guards in Parliament striking as well. Tell me, is there an argument to ban certain people doing certain jobs from striking? 0344 499 1000 for your calls. You can WhatsApp to that number, voice note to that number, or you can text the word talk in your comments to 87222. Now, there's an argument here, which is withdrawing your labour should be a fundamental right of any person who does a job, right? So it's the last right you have. It's the last, if you like, bit of ammunition in your toolkit to make people, your boss, your employer, sit up and listen. I get that argument, I think. But when it comes to certain jobs, like the army and the police, they're not allowed to strike. Should we extend this mindset? Let's get a view. James Mathewson is a former Labour spokesman. He joins us on Talk. Hello.
Hi, Duncan.
What's your take on this, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, when we're talking about the fundamental right to withdraw your labour, as you've pointed out, it is a fundamental right, and you can't just take that away from some people because it's inconvenient. The very point of going on strike, the very point of strike action is to be an inconvenience. It's to cause an inconvenience because no longer are you being listened to.
But doesn't that change when people are doing jobs, for example, that refer to the security of the nation? So you heard me say earlier about the army, they're not allowed to strike, and the police aren't allowed to strike, and rightly so. When we talk about people who provide essential services to this country, surely there's an argument to say that if they want to do the job, they should sign a bit of paper that says, I will not strike.
No, I mean, that's ridiculous because there's no job that, I mean, every job is essential when it comes to that, and especially when it comes to the public services. Yeah. Every single job is essential. Teachers are essential.
Yeah.
You know,
so I would include teachers. I would include doctors. I would include nurses.
You think teachers shouldn't be able to go on strike?
I haven't finished my list yet. I would include nurses. I would also include bus drivers and train drivers. These people... Hang on. These people who provide massively important essential services to all of us, all right? Our country doesn't function without them. They do a great job. Consequently, those jobs matter so much, we cannot afford for them to strike.
They do a great job, but you don't want them to be able to advocate for their own rights?
No.
I mean, that's absolutely ludicrous, Duncan. Come on. It's a job. And if a job is that essential...
But it's essential service. That they contribute to this country. They are the backbone of Britain. They're so valuable that they should acknowledge the fact that they should not be able to strike.
You've just made your list. Let me finish mine, all right? Let me tell you that when it comes to the fact of how important people are in this country and how important their job is, people don't appreciate that or understand it often until people are on strike. Everybody's complaining to train drivers once they withdraw their labour because their negotiations haven't succeeded. People are annoyed at teachers and doctors when they withdraw their labour. These people aren't withdrawing their labour for no reason. We should be on the side. I have never understood somebody standing on a train platform or standing in a hospital waiting room being frustrated at the delay because of withdrawn labour and then saying, oh, that's the fault of the doctors who've withdrawn their labour. Of course it isn't. It's the fault of the hospital. It's the fault of whoever they're negotiating with. That's the issue here. And let me tell you tonight, New Year's Eve's a prime example of this, right? And I know we'll say what's essential and what isn't, but that's everyone's opinion as to what's essential, what isn't. Out there right now...
Well, hang on, no, it's not. It's not everyone's opinion. Matt, mate, it's not everyone's opinion. There are basic essential services that keep this country running. So, I mean, just picking up on what you said, do you think it's wrong then that the army and the police are not able to strike?
No, I mean, the army's very different. They don't work in the way that any other workplace or indeed an industry works.
So you agree they should not be able to strike?
Well, I think when it comes to the military, I'm fine with that.
OK, what about the police?
Police is a difficult one. I do think they should be able to take strike action, but it's difficult to know when and how. And a bit similar to how the BMA do it. You know, these aren't just willy-nilly strike actions. They're negotiated in advance. They're given fair warning of it, so alternative provision can be made. And often I know doctors, I know nurses who have changed their plans to strike, or some of them haven't gone out and some of them have, because they will never leave people in a situation where it's life and death. They never will.
No, I know nurses who have done the same, and I take my hat off to them. But you see, this is where I have an issue, okay, which is striking doesn't work. There's no good faith involved, and
that's not true at all. That is
well.
Let
me make the point. It's a good point, which is we saw it with the doctors. Okay, the doctors got an almost 30% pay rise, which they deserved. Okay, you and I can probably agree on that. Yeah, the doctors got a pay increase, which they deserved. Wes Streeting, when he became health secretary, in good faith said, "I hear you. Here's some money." Right. They came back 6 months later and we've endured more strike action. There's no good faith involved in it. And if you continue to fall for the blackmail activity of striking, you end up under the cosh to the unions, and ultimately it's the British taxpayer who loses out.
You know what the problem is that the whip hand for so long in our country, and in the world, in fact, is held by employers. Employers hold so much power over those who are employed, and that's not right. The second that workers flip that round and say, no, we're going to actually try and advocate for ourselves and stand up for ourselves, everyone takes an issue with it. But they never take an issue with the likes of Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk, who people are on their knees praising, who have made their money off the backs.
Well, hang on, that's irrelevant. That's completely irrelevant.
My point is that we live in a world.
That's the private sector. The private sector is not. They can do what they want in the private sector. In the public sector, ultimately, people's wages are funded by you and me and listeners and viewers.
Employers, public or private, have a responsibility to their work staff. People don't just have to do a job. Nobody has to collect your rubbish. Nobody has to teach your children. Nobody has to care for you in a medical capacity. These people are choosing to do these jobs. It's a job. And that job should come with securities and guarantees, because out there tonight, New Year's Eve, there are people working their backsides off. Not just doctors, not just people who are providing services, but people, in hospitality, people who are working bars and jobs that, will get absolutely no appreciation. They get clicked at, they get shouted at, they get spat at. It's disgraceful. And for too long in this country, employers have had the power over workers. It's not right. And what I tell you we should do, because I know Conservatives love this idea, they love this idea of national service, right? What we should be bringing into this country is a national service where 1 year of your life has to be spent on the front line of hospitality work, because that would change a lot of people's attitudes towards work.
But the mistake you're making, and I hear your point about hospitality, okay, but again, that's in the private sector, all right? If you're good at your job, you can say to your boss, I'm not putting up with this, I want more money. And if you're good, there's a good chance you'll get it. If not, you can go... Hang on, let me make the point.
When was the last time you were doing a job like that, Duncan? That doesn't work like that anymore.
Well, it does, because it's happened to me throughout my life. But let me make the point.
If you're on a 0 hour...
You're not paying my wages, are you? You're not paying my wages. In the public sector, it's the taxpayer who's paying the wages. And why should they be under the cosh of the unions and striking doctors or train drivers or anything else?
Why would we set workers against each other? That's my question. Why would we say that public sector workers are against anybody else who's paying their wages? They too are taxpayers.
They are. This is true. But they also get a very good gold-plated pension when they retire, which is... Hang on. Let me make the point. You keep telling me to let me make your point, which is they get gold-plated pensions, massive employer contributions, which most of us who are either, a freelance or work in the private sector can only dream of.
Are you seriously for real? Are you telling me that you, Duncan, right, that you, in your capacity as a freelance broadcaster, are more hard done by than an NHS nurse?
I don't have the security of anyone in the public sector.
will cry for you, pal. Because
well, you ought to. And there'll be thousands, hundreds of thousands of people listening to this and watching this who also, you know, plumbers, self-employed or whatever, who also don't have the security that people in the public sector do. And that's not to diss them, because if you can get that kind of job with the security and the pension contributions, then good luck to you. Listen, I'm going to wrap it up. We were never going to disagree, or rather, we were never going to agree, James, so we will disagree. We will agree to disagree. That's the phrase I'm looking for, and I wish you the best for 2026. That's James Mathewson, former Labour spokesman. Simple question to you. When we talk about striking, who should be banned from striking? Have I got it wrong when I say that nurses, doctors, train drivers shouldn't have the right to strike? 0344 499 1000 is the number. New Year's Eve, this is Talk.
Libya has become a major transit route for refugees and migrants from sub-Saharan Africa, and many of them come through Libya dreaming of getting to the UK, particularly from Sudan, where there has been a civil war waging for the last 2 years. And those asylum seekers or economic migrants who make it from Sudan to the UK have a 99% chance of being given leave to remain. So I spent several hours talking to immigration chiefs here in Benghazi on the east side of Libya. The Libyan National Army has a very good grip on the immigration problem, albeit fighting against a huge crisis with limited resources. There is a very, very clear process of giving people proper health checks, the life-saving care that they need, and then working out where it is exactly that they've come from. Their message to the UK is that you are fueling this problem. You are effectively advertising a great new life for people from sub-Saharan Africa. They actually said, you know, what do you think happens when a guy from Sudan comes up through Libya and makes his way all the way to the UK and gets put in a luxurious hotel and provided with everything? And make no mistake, it is a perilous journey. We see it from the end point. We see the channel crossing as the dangerous bit. But actually where these journeys begin is in the hot desert. Many, many tens of kilometres have to be covered on foot by these migrants. And as many as 1 in 4 do not make it. That means bodies in the desert. The Libyan authorities are having to recover bodies in the desert. About the UK and how much awareness. Please understand the scale of what we are dealing with here with very, very limited.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hope you're well this afternoon. I hope your preparations for New Year's Eve are going well. Just so you know, when I leave here, I should be getting in my car, using the roads that aren't closed in London because of some fireworks thing that's going on, and then getting home, and I'm going to drink some red wine and eat cheese. That's what I do for my New Year's Eve. Whatever you're doing, I hope it's going to go well for you. Don't forget, Andre Walker here from 10 tonight, if you want to stick us on here at Talk. I feel a little bit bad, and I don't mind saying this. Am I a nasty person when I say to James Mathewson, who was on just before 5 o'clock, that people like train drivers and doctors should not be able to strike? Is that a really harsh view to have? Because he accused me of putting workers against workers. But I just find myself thinking these people are part of essential services, and they should be paid well. But, you know, 80 grand a year for driving a train is well paid, right? So let's not pretend it's not. So I don't want to pit workers against workers, but I do think there are certain jobs that are done by certain people, and they should not be able to strike. 0344 499 1000 for your calls, your WhatsApp messages, your voice notes, of course, on the text. It's 87222. Start your message with the word talk. I'm going to talk to Justin in Sheffield about this in a second. This is Russ in Bedfordshire, who says no one on the public purse should be able to strike. Striking is a measure to protect against rogue employers. No one on the public purse doesn't get fair pay or good pay or appropriate holiday, protection from being ill, pension contributions, protection from unfair dismissal, etc. Says Russ. Thank you for that, Russ. Appreciate your text. Elsewhere, this is Simon, who says, Duncan, regarding the right to strike, certainly I think people whose lives are at risk as a result of strike action should not be allowed to strike, such as doctors, such as the police, and such as the services. However, for those that do strike, I think they should be forced to stand on the picket line for the entirety of the shift that they would be working. So a teacher cannot go on strike and stay at home to look after the kids because the school is closed, whilst other people have to take vacation to look after the kids because the teachers decide to strike. So make sure day shift, late shift, night shift to the people who should be working are stood on the picket lines doing their strikes. Simon, that is a cracking message. Thank you. Let's take a call. This is Justin in Sheffield. Hello, Justin.
Right there.
Hello.
Yeah, I was listening to the guy from the Labour Party on earlier, and I was
James.
I was spitting feathers. That guy was coming out with such absolute cobblers. Standing on a train platform, if your train doesn't turn up and you can't get to work or an important appointment, you shouldn't blame the striking train drivers. What's he on about?
I don't know. I think he's on a different planet, but I won't be too rude about him because I do have quite a soft spot for him. But, it must be, a nice place, that planet that he inhabits. So when we talk about people who get involved in industrial action or strike action, who should not be allowed to strike, Justin?
I don't think the police should be allowed to strike. I don't think the prison office should be allowed to strike. I don't think train drivers should be allowed to strike because they're paid for. It's a hugely subsidised service paid for by the public. Now, which brings me to my point that I actually felt that the thing he said that really annoyed me, he says, employers have got the whip hand, employees haven't got any power. This is absolute rubbish. Employees can leave a job and go and get a job somewhere else, and that is the reason that they are paid as much or as little as they are, and employers will pay their staff, good staff, obviously, as much as they can and treat them as well as they can because they want them to stay.
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, I've run, in a dim and distant past, I've run radio stations, okay? Not just people talking into the microphone, but people who sell advertising and all kinds of stuff. I've done it in the past. And, if you have a good person, someone you want to keep hold of, it doesn't matter if there's someone who's good in front of a microphone or good selling adverts to car companies or whatever, you're happy to pay them more money because they're worth their weight in gold, right?
Quite, yeah. And at the end of the day, what was it Thatcher said? And interestingly, I am a Thatcher fan now, but I wasn't at the time. But one thing she said at the time, which I agreed with even then, you can't buck the market. And people's wages are set by supply and demand, other than train drivers, and particularly underground drivers, who use their industrial power to basically blackmail the government and the employers, which is the government really, to pay them more than they're worth.
You see it as blackmail, strike action?
Oh, I do. I definitely do, yeah.
All right, so here's a question, and I'm interested in your answer here, Justin. If you're someone who, let's talk about striking doctors, because, that's current, right? If you're a doctor and you're genuinely unhappy with how much you get paid and also the conditions that you have to work under or work in or whatever, the argument is your ultimate right is to withdraw your labour. So if you don't have that, what do you do about it to make sure your employer understands that you're really hacked off with what you're doing?
Go and get a job somewhere else.
Go and get a job elsewhere, disappear off to Australia and become a doctor.
Yeah, which we're told that's what, shed loads of people were doing. Incidentally, one thing you said earlier, which I didn't agree with, you were implying that loads and loads of people at A&E go in there for really minor ailments.
Well, it's not me. It's not me saying that, mate. The figures that have come out over the last 5 years, there are people going to A&E with constipation and hiccups.
Well, yeah, but what percentage is that? Because speaking for myself, whenever I've had to go to A&E, I've had to wait for hours and hours, and I would only go to
because chances are there's someone in the queue in front of you who's got hiccups and they don't know what to do about it. But that's not your experience.
No, I think the vast majority of people do not want to go to A&E.
No, well, I have a sympathy with that view, because having been in there with a daughter when she was a lot younger, I mean, it really is, despite some great staff there, it's hell on earth. I mean, you know, there were drunks in there were people falling asleep, people who had passed out. I wouldn't wish it on anyone. But I do think there is a fundamental issue in this country with people who go, oh, I'll just rock up at A&E because I can't be bothered to get a GP's appointment. I'm going to move it on, Justin, but thank you so much for your call. 0344 499 1000 for yours. You want to talk about A&E? Why do we have people going to A&E with headaches and hiccups or constipation? What's been your A&E experience? We're also looking at your priorities for 2026. Top of the list is the economy, followed by immigration. Tell me yours. And also, very curious for you to tell me this afternoon who should be banned from striking. 0344 499 1000 is the number. Some breaking news this afternoon here at Talk. The government would have avoided the embarrassing failures of due diligence and information sharing. Those are the words of Emily Thornberry. And this is the case of Alaa Abdel Fattah. So I'll give you this in a bit more detail. The government will have avoided the embarrassing failures of due diligence and information sharing in the case of Alaa Abdel Fattah had it appointed an envoy for complex detention cases as promised. Emily Thornberry, the chairwoman of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, has said in a letter to Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper. Fantastic. Tell us something we didn't already know. And also, this is brilliant because this is red on red political action. Emily Thornberry is really hacked off. She didn't get a cabinet job, okay? She didn't get a cabinet job, all right? She was a shallow something or other before July 2024. Keir Starmer did not put her in the cabinet. There is a backstory to this, which is her being able to go, yeah, do you know what? I can have a pop at the current administration. But isn't it marvellous, eh? I mean, talk about stating the obvious. The government would have avoided the embarrassing failures of due diligence and information sharing in the case of Alaa Abdel Fattah had it appointed an envoy for complex detention cases as it promised. These are the words of the chairwoman of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee in a letter to the Foreign Secretary. You would kind of hope, wouldn't you? And I was saying this the other night when I was here on Talk. When you offer citizenship to someone like Al Fattah, who is controversial, who was in prison in Egypt, who is a political activist, you would have thought somewhere along the line there would have been someone who thought, better check out this bloke's social media footprint. Oh, he's a bit dodge. And then maybe, as we discovered earlier today, have a look at his sisters. Blimey, that's a bit of a shocker. I mean, you just kind of hope that the due diligence would have been done, but it appears we expect too much of our politicians and our government. You want to pick up on that at all? 0344 499 1000 is the number. What you're going to see over the next few hours are various political leaders delivering to you and me their New Year message. Kemi Badenoch will do it later, the Conservative leader, various other political leaders will be doing it as well. Someone who was first, actually, out of the traps is the Reform UK leader Nigel Farage. Have we got his New Year's message? We have. This is what he said.
I can't remember the country ever being gloomier. People are getting poorer, more people are becoming unemployed, inflation is proving sticky, and our debt is running completely out of control with a Chancellor who doesn't seem to have a clue what she's doing. Worse than that, people are frightened now to walk down the street wearing a watch, wearing jewellery. Oh, and by the way, if you say anything rude on Facebook, you may well get a knock at the door. We're the people offering hope. We're the people offering change. And 2025 showed you, with those county elections, which we won comfortably, what we are capable of. As we look forward to 2026, we have a massive set of elections. The whole of Scotland, the whole of Wales, all 32 London boroughs, county elections, thousands of council seats all over the country. And yet what are we now seeing? We're seeing a Labour government saying to those councils, if you want to cancel the elections, in some cases for the second year in a row, you can do so. And already, East and West Sussex, controlled by the Conservatives, have said, thank you very much, we'll cancel the elections. That is the kind of authoritarian country that we are now living in.
That's the leader of Reform UK, Nigel Farage, his New Year message. One of the questions I want you to answer over the next hour or so here on Talk is, what does 2026 hold for Reform UK, do you think? Old Nige there, very clear on his views of what's going to happen in 2026. More opportunities for Reform UK. Some people, some pollsters, people in my line of work, we always look at the polls. Some commentators saying that Reform UK have possibly peaked when it comes to their support across the nation. Other people saying, oh no, you can't take these figures as gospel, because there will be some people, when they're asked about how they might vote, who would never say they're going to vote Reform, but secretly they will. Let's get some thoughts on this. Dan Barker is a board member at Reform UK and he joins us on Talk. Hi, Dan.
Hi there, Duncan. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, and thank you for giving up some time on this New Year's Eve. Just so my listeners and viewers are clear this afternoon, a board member of Reform UK, what does that mean?
So I'm one of 3 members of the board that's come from the membership. There was an election held in the summer, and I was one of the lucky 3 to get through.
Excellent. And what kind of responsibilities do you have?
So we're part of the board sets the kind of agenda and shapes policy for the party about how we're going to win elections, how the big decisions are made. And one of my roles is to feed back members' ideas, thoughts. So I'm a voice of the membership on the board with Nigel and the others.
Lovely. Thank you for the clarification. I just think people will be interested in the kind of things you're involved in. So the year ahead for 2026, before we look ahead to that year and where Reform UK may or may not be going, how would you assess your last 12 months?
I think the last 12 months have been phenomenal in terms of where we've gone in terms of polling. We're now consistently polling above 30%. I think it's nearly 200 polls. We've been over 30% now. We've got 5 MPs, 2 mayors, 12 councils were in control, and I think somewhere around 900, 1,000 councillors. Go back 15 months, we had a handful of councillors and 5 MPs. We hope to repeat that again in May, as Nigel said in the video, in Wales, Scotland and across England and Wales as well.
You've got a number of MPs, but also you've lost 2 in the last 12 months, haven't you? James McMurdoch and Rupert Lowe. What happened there?
Well, I mean, I think that's all in the past. And
well, it is in the past because it was in the last 12 months, but I think our viewers and listeners would love to know exactly what went on.
Well, I mean, Rupert left, didn't he? And it's a shame he went, but you can't attack the leader like that and expect to stay in the party. It wouldn't happen anywhere else, and it won't happen in Reform either.
Right, and James McMurdoch?
Well, James stepped down. There was investigations, I think, around his dealings on COVID loans. And he's chosen to remain as an independent MP, so that was his choice.
Earlier this year, I mean, a storming set of local election results, taking control of certainly over 10 councils, from Durham down to Kent to Lancashire as well. How do you think that element of local government's doing for Reform UK? How's it going out on the local front?
Well, I think what I see and hear from various councils, particularly in the northwest where I'm based, where we've got Lancashire County Council, is I see them making a lot of progress, saving money, implementing the policies that we talked about before an election. We're bringing that change in. However, we have only had, been in control for just under 7 months. So it's not a long time, but we are making progress in those areas.
Yeah, some commentators have pointed out, and I think fairly, that Reform have lost some of their councillors over the last few months, particularly in Kent, which does look like a bit of a basket case. What's been going on there?
Well, I mean, there's always a bit of churn when you've got this many councillors and this many councils. I mean, I think the same figures that I've seen for Labour and Conservative are a lot higher than ours in terms of churn. The incident in Kent with, I think there was a Lyndon Kencaran, there was a private meeting was recorded and broadcast. And of course, that is not what you do when you're in a party. You don't do that to your leader. And so they were rightly disciplined, those councillors that were involved in that. But Lyndon Kencaran and Kent County Council are doing a very good job. And I think you'll see that in the figures when they update the results, and also when at the next election as well.
And some council taxpayers are going to be pretty hacked off, I should imagine, with Reform, because in some areas they pledged not to put up council tax, but it looks like in places like Kent and elsewhere, they're going to have to whack it up a bit.
So my understanding, Duncan, is that the party's position across the piece was that we would never say we wouldn't put council tax up. We would say that we would look at it. Now, if individual councillors have gone and put that on their leaflets right? And that was their decision. That was not the party position. So we've always had that position that we would do everything we can not to put council tax up, but we couldn't guarantee it.
Let's look ahead to 2026. And Dan, thank you for answering those questions. I mean, your man there, Nigel Farage, very clear that it's all for the taking for Reform UK. As someone who writes about politics and broadcasts about politics, I mean, I've never known a country so divided for so many reasons against a backdrop of a Labour government that is struggling just a year and a half into its administration, the Lib Dems who effectively enable the Labour Party, the Greens who frankly just seem to be mad, and the Conservatives who, I mean, I've got a bit of time for Kemi Badenoch. I think she's turned a bit of a corner in the last few months, but there's still a long way to go. Just give us a sense of what you would want to achieve in 2026 come the May elections. What do you think you can achieve?
Well, I think if you start with Wales, so, you know, the Caerphilly by-election, we got 36%, which was a phenomenal result given, I think, the last time, the previous election, it was single-digit figures. So I think that gives an indication that we're going to do very well in Wales. We hope to do well, and we expect to do well. And we've got a full set of candidates ready for those Welsh elections. Similarly, in Scotland, we've come close on by-elections up there, and we hope to do well there. The polling up there suggests we're going to do very well in Scotland as well. Now, in England and Wales, where elections haven't been cancelled so far, and I think that's a shameful fact that Conservatives and Labour, you know, conspiring to cancel elections so they don't have to face electorate. But where elections go ahead, we will be standing a candidate in every seat. And we hope to do very well in London, in the metropolitan areas, in my part of the world, so Merseyside, Greater Manchester, and all over the country. So we are going for it. And as Nigel said, May the 7th is the next kind of horizon for us. That's the goal. We're not looking beyond that because we know and we want to do well on that day.
And before I let you go to open the bottle or go down the pub or whatever you do to celebrate your New Year's Eve, right. What does success look like for Reform UK in 2026 as far as you're concerned?
Well, I think we need to do as well or better than we did last year. I would hope that we would get a chance at some parliamentary by-elections as well, that we'd get a good foothold in Wales, perhaps even opposition, and the same in Scotland as well. Certainly, if not opposition, second or third party there. And that will see us well placed for future elections in those areas.
Dan, I appreciate your time on this New Year's Eve. Thank you. All the best for 2026. That's Dan Barker, board member at Reform UK. What do you think the future holds in 2026 for Nigel Farage's Reform UK party? 0344 499 1000. I mean, you've got Farage's New Year message. You heard there from Dan. I mean, they're kicking at an open goal, aren't they? Or are they? 87222 on the text. Start your message with the word talk. I'm Duncan Barkes. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
I'm Duncan Barkes. This is Talk. It's New Year's Eve. Good to have you alongside me. Stack of messages here, and we'll get to some of your voice notes in a second. This is Joanna from Salisbury talking about the emergency services and people who go to A&E for things like hiccups. She says, 20 years ago, my father had a flu virus over Christmas and a ticklish cough he couldn't get rid of and a bit of stomachache, which wasn't unusual because he had ulcers when he was younger. We persuaded him to go to the GP, who said he was fine. He'd live to be 100. 2 weeks later, it wasn't any better or worse, so we persuaded him to go back. The GP did the usual checks. He said, you are fine. My dad said, put the stethoscope where the pain is. The GP said, and sent him to the hospital. 33 days later, he died of lung cancer that had spread to his stomach. He hadn't smoked for 26 years. Joanna, thank you for that. I mean, that kind of message does really just hammer it home, doesn't it? That there's no right or wrong about this. But, I mean, when we look at these figures of people going to A&E for things like headaches and hiccups, I mean, hiccups in particular, I mean, unless someone wants to prove me wrong, and whenever I say this on the radio or on Talk, someone usually does, but I don't think there's been a death from hiccups, has there? I'll do a few more here. This one from Angie. Unfortunately, I've had to use A&E 3 Christmases in a row. Each time has been horrendous. On 2 occasions, I had life-threatening blood clots, and on the 3rd, I had a fall. All 3 times, there were people waiting 8 hours or more. The amount of people being treated in the waiting room was something out of a disaster movie. There were so many time wasters there, you couldn't get a bed. I waited 9 hours for one. Please do keep your messages coming in about your A&E experiences. I'm going to do a couple more here about strike action, and then we'll do your voice notes. This one here is from Ernie, who says, I don't think anyone should strike. If there's a dispute, both sides should go into arbitration and abide by the ruling of a jury-like system, says Ernie. That's an interesting thought, Ernie. And this one's John in Bury. Afternoon, John. I was a bin wagon driver back in the 80s in Manchester city centre. In those days, we were classed as essential services, and when we got a job on, council was a job for life. The money wasn't great, but you had security. But as the years passed, the unions got more power and the councils got more left-wing and woke. The job went downhill, and I agree they should remain essential services with no striking. The man you had on is why this country is in a mess. I think that's Labour activist guy, isn't it? I've forgotten his name. Anyway, let's do some of your voice notes. This is Jay on his hopes for 2026. Jay.
Fantastic show as always. Getting back to your question, what is it that's the priority? As a father of 5, working man, I genuinely fear for the safety of my missus and kids when I'm not around. And I'm sure many other men do, and I'm sure many ladies do. This is not acceptable. We've got constant cuts to the police, and it's just got to a point now where I don't feel safe for them. Look at the alleged Afghan national yesterday who went into the hospital, couldn't get an appointment, and battered 6 staff with a crowbar. And that poor nurse, her head is an absolute mess. He just kept hitting her. You know, these people are not coming with the same culture mindset as us.
It's an interesting point, Jay, and it's a sad point you make, but you're right to make it as well. Jay, thank you for your voice note. This is David on the YouGov poll and priorities for 2026.
Hi, Duncan. Happy New Year. The problem with polls is that they ask individual questions: immigration, the economy, and how the Labour Party are doing. If you actually lump them all together, you would find a completely horrendous answer. Socrates had the same problem. If you look at a University of York poll of food experts, they reckoned that 40% of experts surveyed believe that civil unrest was possible in the next 10 years. And in the next 50 years, that rose to 80%. That survey was done in 2023. If you did it now, those figures would be unbelievably high. This is the way that the Labour Party is, politicians and the Uniparty is dragging the country. That's the problem with polls. David in the Cotswolds.
Sadly, I think you're onto something about civil unrest. I also think, I was talking to a young lad who's looking to get into the armed forces, and he's adamant that by 2029 this country will be at war. Though some people already say it is, by proxy with Russia, but that's maybe a conversation for a different time. Final one here, this is Elle on the idea of tagging illegal immigrants.
Firstly, I'm from a forces background. I used to live in Crowborough up until the mid-70s, so I know the place well. Secondly, tagging. If they say that I don't know it's wrong to rape somebody, do you really think that you're going to put a tag on them? They're going to say, oh, I understand fully what I meant to do. What you need to do is the minute they land here, is you put them on a plane and you take them back to France. Because even though France will say, well, they're not French, they did come from France, didn't they? And we give them an awful lot of money. So I think they need to put it back on France. You deal with it, it's not our problem.
I've always said that, you know, the answer was a deterrent, and we have one in place with the Conservative Party's Rwanda scheme, because you wouldn't want to be processed in somewhere like Rwanda. And then when Labour got into government back in July 2024, they scrapped that deterrent, and that's where we find ourselves today. Thank you for your voice notes. 0344 499 1000 for yours. An interesting bit of polling has come out. A lot of polling around on New Year's Eve, but it's worth chewing over. For the first time ever, people in Britain say they are opposed to a national ID scheme, digital ID. Are you opposed to it? Let's revisit this particular chat. If you're opposed to the idea of being forced mandatory digital ID in this country, tell me why. For the record, I am. I don't want it. It's coming down the tracks. Let's get more on this from Alan Miller, co-founder of the Together Declaration. He joins us on Talk. Hello, Alan.
Hello there, good evening.
Evening. I'm not massively surprised with this poll finding. It is interesting, though, for the first time, we now have people, the majority of people in this country, saying I'm opposed to a mandatory digital ID scheme. I'm guessing that you're opposed to it as well. Tell me why.
Well, at the Together Declaration, we took over 360,000 signatures to Downing Street at our launch 4 years ago. And since then, 3 million people have signed a petition against digital ID. We know that they're trying to force 8 million directors, our children with the Children's Schools Welfare Bill, and veterans, using them as guinea pigs. And we know that the majority of people in Britain do not want a mandatory digital ID. We've never had it in any manifesto. It's never been consulted. In fact, the last time it was dispensed with was in 1952, when Churchill said, we're not going to do that, that won't keep us free. And instead, what we've seen is the Tony Blair Institute consistently thinking that the same solution to any problem is there. We were told at Labour Party conference, when they smeared so much of the public, that this was going to stop the boats. And then when everyone said, well, you've got these IDs in Italy, France and Germany, and it hasn't stopped illegal migrants, they said, well, it's not about the boats, it's about convenience, and it's about just being able to do things without the problems of getting out analog paper. The reality is we know that millions of people are not online and are not digital, but it's not just pensioners and vulnerable people. The British public do not want to be forced into a mandatory system of surveillance and checking and suffocation. We've seen, Duncan, things like debanking around people's political views. We've seen that people have been imprisoned for social media posts. We know that with low traffic neighborhoods and constant surveillance and fines, the push all the time is that you've got people in power that think that we need to do what they say. And people are very concerned of a kind of social credit system. It's not just that, of course, though. It is also the fact that we've seen loads of data breaches. Millions in the UK. We've seen it cost Jaguar huge amounts of money and affect the economy. We've seen it around the world. And even the places we're told are really good, like Estonia, have had huge breaches. And the one login system has had whistleblowers saying this is vulnerable to data attack. We've seen personnel in Afghanistan exposed. We're saying no to this, and people should get involved with Together Declaration.
I'll let you get the plug in before we end the chat about the petition, because it is important. But you're absolutely right to talk about data security. You talked about Jaguar Land Rover. I mean, you know, even in our high streets, the Co-op, they were hacked. Marks and Spencer, they were hacked. Harrods, I mean, I haven't shopped there for years, so I don't get paid enough money, but they were hacked. You know, so you don't have to go too far to find a hacking story. So there is the data security side of it. But for me, I don't trust any government of any political stripe. I mean, it just so happens we have a Labour one at the moment, but I wouldn't trust the Tories, I wouldn't trust the Lib Dems or anyone else with a digital ID scheme, because ultimately politicians like having power. And you only have to go back 4 or 5 years, don't you, to see how our civil liberties were stripped away so quickly during the pandemic, to see how something that some people might think is, oh, it's a good idea, you've got nothing to be worried about, could actually be used against them quite effectively.
That's absolutely the case. We saw that, you know, Boris Johnson said he'd eat any digital ID or ID card he was forced to have, and then there we were, all having to have so-called vaccine passports to participate. We actually ran a very strong campaign against that with thousands of hospitality venues challenging it. And we have a situation where the British public is fed up with being gaslit and being treated with contempt and being told that when they ask questions about things, about borders or about the state of society, that somehow they're beyond the pale, they run the risk of having a knock on the door. And this constant surveillance and pushing people to do things in a certain way is unacceptable. We saw what happened with the Horizon scandal.
Yes.
We know that there are lots of bad parties who are trying to get our data. But the fact is, we shouldn't have to prove who we are to participate in society. We have the liberties, freedom of conscience that are essential to Britain. So we're saying, everyone get involved, togetherdeclaration.org, sign the petitions, write to your councillors and MPs, and the May elections are going to be really important. This is going to be the thing that topples Keir Starmer.
You may well be right. Listen, got to move it on, Alan, but have a good new year and thank you for your time. That's Alan Miller, co-founder of the Together Declaration. For me, it's really simple, right? One, I don't like being told what to do, okay? It's a fundamental issue I've had throughout most of my life. Two, I don't see why I or you should be forced to have some form of digital ID just because this government is unable to stop people crossing the channel illegally in small boats. And that's my opposition, outlined fully. 0344 499 1000. I'm Duncan Barkes. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
New Year's Eve on Talk. I'm Duncan Barkes. I'm here through until 7 p.m. Good to have you along. I hope your preparations for your New Year's Eve, whatever that might look like or might be, are going well. I was talking to Petri Hoskin, who was on earlier. She plans to sit at home with her 2 dogs and drink whiskey, which sounds pretty good to me. I'm here through until 7. 0344 499 1000 is a number. If you just put us on, a few things we're chewing over, one of which is digital ID. If you're someone who is against it, tell me why this afternoon here on Talk. We're also talking about industrial action and striking, who should be banned from striking, and one of the big things we're chewing over as we look at a bit of polling that's come out looking ahead to 2026 and people's priorities. For you, what is the priority in 2026? Top of the poll is the economy, which I think makes perfect sense given the state of the economy, followed by immigration. There's also stuff in there like defence and health and stuff like that. For you, what is the priority for 2026? And we're getting some really good messages coming in regarding A&E accident and emergency off the back of this these findings where people have turned up at A&E with things like hiccups and constipation. What's been your A&E experience? If you want to text, it's 87222. Start your message with the word Talk. Love having conversations with people. 0344 499 1000. You can also use that number to voice note us and also WhatsApp us. Something else that I've seen that's caught my attention, and I wouldn't normally give a great deal of time to Sir Ed Davey, leader of the Liberal Democrats. I made this point earlier. I just see the Lib Dems as Labour enablers, but maybe that's a chat for a different time. But there's this idea that we should have a bank holiday to celebrate England's first king, and it should be added to the calendar to reclaim patriotism. Now, I'm going to mention a name that you probably haven't heard of, because I haven't heard of this bloke. This is King Athelstan, who was England was first unified under him in AD 927. Who knew? Sir Ed Davey, the Lib Dem leader, said, I certainly think that the 1100th anniversary of the birth of England absolutely deserves a bank holiday. I think it's really important that the mainstream debate reclaims patriotism around our history. This is the evidence of how long we go back in our proud history, and I think true patriots would want that bank holiday. So I found myself thinking, well, what does it mean? What does being a patriot mean to you? That's what I want your thoughts on this afternoon as well. 0344 499 1000. Does this mean you've got to have a flagpole outside your house with a Union flag fluttering away in the breeze? Is that a true patriot? Or is having a Union flag sticker on the bumper of your motor? Is that what it's about? Or is it about, I don't know, being able to recite the works of G.K. Chesterton? Google it. Someone will give us a view on this. This is Matthew Goodwin Freeman, Conservative councillor, Hatch End in Harrow and political commentator. Hello, Matt.
Hi, Duncan. How are you?
Very well indeed. Are you a patriot?
Well, I mean, I'm always wearing my Union Jack, so I think that answers your question straight away.
It does. You're looking good. But what does it mean to you to be a patriot? How do you define patriotism in 2025 in this country?
I think it's someone being proud of what Britain means, proud of our heritage, not wishing to whitewash or rewrite history, accepting, yeah, there were mistakes in the past, but everyone makes mistakes in the past, and being hopeful and optimistic about the future. You know, this is Great Britain, United Kingdom. We've got to start talking up this country. So that's why ideas like this, I think they are quite interesting, and they certainly can gather headlines, and I'm all for it, but it's definitely something to do with the flag.
Yeah, let's get a little bit political here and do some Ed Davey bashing, because it's one of my favourite pastimes. I mean, you know, the Benny Hill of politics, as far as I'm concerned. Are you surprised that he came out with this? Because I don't naturally associate the Liberal Democrats with patriotism.
I don't want to burst Ed Davey's bubble, but he didn't come out with this. Andrew Rosendale MP in October first raised this. He raised this in the House of Commons in business questions, asking for a bank holiday on the 1,100th year. So unfortunately, Ed Davey, I'm bursting your bubble there. It was a Tory who got there first.
Yeah, it is. But Ed Davey is on record this morning as supporting it. I'm quite surprised.
Yeah, I mean, let's see what if it ever gets to a point where the government considers giving an extra bank holiday. Yeah. Let's see if the Lib Dems actually vote for it. We do have to throw out there, an extra bank holiday actually costs the UK economy between £1.5 and £2.5 billion. So given the state of the economy at the moment and everything Labour are doing, I can't imagine they're going to offer another bank holiday. That's the equivalent of the whole of the winter fuel payments cut. Yeah. So all the trouble that they had over that, and then they've U-turned on it. Imagine them saying, oh, well, we're just going to chuck an extra bank holiday out for everyone.
Yeah, and I can't imagine Keir Starmer, unless he's really even lower in the polls, suggesting we should have a bank holiday to celebrate, if you like, the creation of England. I mean, he'd have to be dragged kicking and screaming to the podium to make that announcement. A final question for you, though, and I'll be interested in your take on this. You know, I've been in different countries around the world. I spent a bit of time in the past in the United States of America, all right, where there is no issue. You want a flag outside your house, a lot of people have it, right? You know, business is the same. Yet in this country, you are somehow seen as some kind of far-right thug, racist, just because you're displaying the flag of your country. How has that mindset been allowed to, how has it been created in this country over the last couple of decades? Because it never used to be like this, did it?
For far too many years, we've given in to those who want to question our patriotism, question this country, rewrite history. We need to start saying, no, enough is enough. There is nothing to be ashamed of the Union flag. There's nothing to be ashamed of being proud of our country. Now, the criticism will be that, the far right, the EDL, the St. George's Cross, yeah, other groups have used those flags, but at the end of the day, it is our country's flag. And if that's what it means to you, that's what it means to you. So for me, I am incredibly proud of Great Britain, the UK, Northern Ireland, and England, particularly being someone of English heritage. I will fly those flags on my shirt and outside my house. And if you want to lock me up for it, good luck.
Well, let's hope it never happens, Matt. Good to talk to you. Have a great New Year's Eve as well. Matthew Goodwin Freeman, Conservative councillor for Hatch End in Harrow and political commentator. Should we do some more voice notes? I think we should. This is JW on the issue of A&E and ambulance costs.
My son, he was 7 years old when we moved here to the UK. Now he's 32. And he moved back to the US 6 years ago, and he had to take an ambulance. Didn't realize ambulances in the US aren't free. He got a bill for $2,100 US for a 1 mile ambulance ride. And he learned the hard way. If you don't pay the bill within 2 weeks, they send what we call debt collectors / bailiffs here. And they have more authority in the US than they do here. People here are lucky. They're very lucky. And I really ashamed that they abuse the NHS the way they do. Thanks again, and great show.
Yeah, very lucky, but they still abuse it. Thanks for your comments, JW. This is Dale on who he thinks should not be able to strike.
Hi, Duncan. Great show. Happy New Year, mate. For me, who shouldn't be allowed to strike? Junior doctors. They have signed or agreed to learn as they work in order to become a doctor. That's their agreement. They've received a pay rise. If they're not happy with that, go and be a barman or a barmaid or a bar person if you want to be woke. Don't mess with people's lives. I don't want my grandma taken into hospital and then for her to lose her life because doctors are striking because they're not happy with their pay. So learn, earn the money later on down the line and be happy. Dale from Stenning. Thank you.
Dale, I think you're bang on the money. 0344 499 1000 for your voice note. You can WhatsApp us to that number with your messages and you can call us. That's what Lisa's done in Staffordshire. Hello, Lisa.
Hi, how you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. What would you like to say?
Yeah, all it is like with regard to Nigel Farage and the Reform Party, I just think we're putting too much faith into the guy for him to deal with it in his first term. Don't get me wrong. I think that we're looking at that way ahead. But yeah, don't expect too much because he's got to do a complete redo on everything that Labour and Conservative have failed to do in the last few terms.
Right, so let me just pick over what you said so far, if I may. We're asking the question, what does the future hold for Reform UK? From what you said, you think they will get into government at the next general election? Yeah?
Yeah, I do indeed. I think people are sick of... I think people are sick of what's been promised. And
so people might give Reform a punt, but from what you said, you think that maybe their expectations for Reform UK's first term in government, if they were to get elected, are maybe a bit high because there's a lot of work to do.
Seriously, they have got a lot of work to do. And, I think we just got to go with it. We just got to, give the guy a chance. Because it's a steep old hill to climb to all right,
here's a question for you, because I mean at the moment unless there's some kind of catastrophe, the next general election should be in 2029. All right, that's a good 3 years between now and then. Do you think Reform UK under Nigel Farage can maintain their top position in the polls for the next 3 years? That's quite a big ask, isn't it?
Seriously, currently with what's going on with Keir Starmer and the Labour government, no, I don't really think that's a big ask.
You don't think that Kemi Badenoch might be able to turn around the Conservative Party and be snapping at the heels of Reform UK?
Oh, she can have a go, but I think people are just getting sick and tired of those two same parties, the two big parties. Unless something amazing happens with the Green Party and the...
I get the sense from people I talk to who are not politically engaged like me, because I get paid to do it for a living, that they're frustrated with the Conservatives, even though Kemi might have changed things a little bit. And they're just... I know a lot of people who voted Labour in the general election, they've seriously got buyer's regret, massively, buyer's remorse, and kind of thinking, well, next time I may well give a different party a shot, and that party could be Reform. Lisa in Staffordshire, thank you. 0344 499 1000 is a number. New Year's Eve. I'm Duncan Barkes, and this is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
New Year's Eve afternoon, I'm Duncan Barkes. I'm here through until 7 on Talk. After 6, just to give you the heads up, we're going to be talking about Shamima Begum. And I'll be asking the question, what should happen to her, as we hear that her ban from Britain, which has been upheld by the previous government, is being challenged by European judges. There was a piece in the Sun newspaper floating the very real prospect that Shamima Begum may well be able to return to this country. You may recall she was the 15-year-old who left Bethnal Green, where she lived, and disappeared to the other side of the world and married an IS fighter. Your thoughts on that after 6. In the meantime, I'm interested in talking about this from the perspective of a father of a, well, she's no longer a teenager, but a woman in her early 20s. And I'll tell you why. This is all to do with Camilla, the Queen, who's spoken out for the first time about the anger she felt after she was indecently assaulted on a train as a teenager. At the time, she was known as Camilla Shand. She was groped as a schoolgirl and is said to have fended off her attacker with the heel of her shoe. Good on her. She said, I was reading my book and this boy, a man, attacked me and I did fight back. I remember getting off the train and my mother looking at me and saying, why is your hair standing on end and why is the button missing from your coat? I'd been attacked, but I remember anger and I was so furious about it. Now, I'm not going to pretend I really have any insight to this particular story when we talk about women, young women or women of any age, being out in public and being groped or sexually assaulted. Look, I'm a bloke in his mid-50s, I'm 6 foot, I'm no stranger to the fridge, right? I can look after myself should I have to. But I wanted to get an insight on this. So let's talk to Cathy Larkman, National Policing Lead and Wales Coordinator for the Women's Rights Network, who joins us. Hello.
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 Lovely to speak to you.
Cathy, thank you for your time on this New Year's Eve. I'm going to ask you a blunt question here because, as I mentioned a few moments ago, I have no real point of reference for this. I don't get groped in public or on public transport, OK? But I'm a dad of a daughter, and quite frankly, if someone did this to her, I'd punch their lights out. So give our listeners and viewers a real sense as to how big this problem is in 2025.
Thank you, Duncan. And can I say, first of all, bravo to the Queen for speaking out in relation to what happened to her. This will resonate with every woman and girl across the UK, and I'm really glad she's used her platform on this occasion. She has been a consistent voice in relation to violence against women and girls. This is going to be a familiar experience to women everywhere, Duncan, which I appreciate is bad news to you as the father of a daughter. But, the fact that Queen Camilla remembers this so clearly more than 60 years later is the same as for every other woman that this has happened to. Unfortunately, women are sexually harassed and subject to sexual assaults in various public places, whether that is the workplace, on public transport. My own organisation, the Women's Rights Network, have exposed the level of sexual assaults on women in mixed-sex changing rooms in leisure centres, even in hospital wards where you'd expect to be safe. This still happens. So it's a problem. It was a problem over 60 years ago, as identified by the Queen. It is still a problem now.
Has it got worse?
Well, it certainly, I think it has certainly got worse because we're now dealing with the digital sphere influencing this as well. Women's bodies are often seen as public property, and they are not public property, and unfortunately, the level of punishment sometimes for these offences, or often for these offences, is not sufficient and almost sort of brushes off the severity of the offence. I was reading one particular case today where a man had pushed a woman into a toilet cubicle in the north of England, in Barnard Castle, whilst drunk in the female toilets. I should have had. So this man was in the female toilets, had exposed himself to her, and the judge, when dealing with him and letting him go with a community order and some rehabilitation, all the reporting really was around the effect on the man and the shame brought on the man and the embarrassment for him and how...
Well, hang on a second. I don't understand. Forgive me for interrupting. I don't understand. Why would the focus be on the man and not the victim?
Well, unfortunately, we see this time and time again where incidents of sexual assault happen. This is violence against women and girls. The other thing I would say is the Angiolini inquiry, which was set up following the horrendous murder of Sarah Everard in 2021. Has reported on 2 occasions now in respect of its findings. Part of its report was that based on police recorded data and the crime survey for England and Wales, it wasn't possible for policing, government or the public to understand the problem of sexually motivated crimes against women in public places. So that is now in the 2020s.
Well, this is utterly absurd. I mean, you don't have to be the sharpest tool in the box to realise, I'm going to speak really bluntly here, to get your todger out and wave in front of a woman is not appropriate behaviour in today's society. Why do these people do it?
It's incredible, isn't it, really? Sadly, there is, a section of society that almost views this as, as almost a sort of minor level of offending. It is not a minor level of offending. We see incidents not just of indecent exposure and indecent assault, but voyeurism as well. And, it's a harsh reminder, really, that the Pellicot trial, the incidents involving Giselle Pellicot in France that received such massive media and national attention, only initially came to light because her husband was caught upskirting, I think the term is, but filming up women's skirts in a supermarket. So, these types of offences are clear red flags and display, a horrendous and unacceptable attitude towards women.
Kathy, what needs to change and how do we do it?
Well, there's been a lot of talk, isn't there, from government about sort of teaching, teaching young boys more respect for women and girls. We've got to stop, I think, talking the talk and start walking the walk in relation to this. We are sick of warm words from politicians as to how they're tackling misogyny. It would probably help if those politicians could agree that they know actually what a woman is. For starters, so that they can actually
it would
deal
help, wouldn't it?
with the problem. To sort of effectively teach respect for women, then it's got to permeate all levels of society. Boys have got to have positive role models. We need to emphasise positive male characteristics as well as dealing with incidents as and when they occur and not brushing them off. So dealing with them in the first instance and being aware of them at an early stage.
I say this with respect. I'm picking up on quite a lot of frustration in your tone of voice. Do you find yourself just thinking, I'm banging my head against a brick wall here? Because that's what it seems like.
I think there are some brilliant examples of sort of positive behaviour out there, I have to say. There's some excellent sort of men as well that this sort of behaviour is totally unacceptable to, and there are women sort of speaking out and doing positive things to deal with this as well. But I think, when we talk about national leadership on this to deal with it, we'd like the government really to sort of, to recognise and put in place meaningful processes to deal with this, the judiciary to deal with offending in a sort of significant and meaningful way as well, and to understand that women in public places deserve respect, deserve safety. Every single one of those women or girls who've been sexually assaulted or sexually harassed in a public place has had to modify her behaviour as a result. And every woman will identify with this, choosing the safest route home, being aware of who's around you, not going into the train carriage where there's a solitary man, holding your keys in your hand just in case you're attacked. This is normality for women and girls.
Yeah, I know. I had to teach my daughter how to use her house keys in a way that's not just to open the front door. Listen, a final question and a relatively quick answer, if you'd be kind enough, given our time constraints. If a woman finds themselves in a situation where they're being, to use the tabloid term, groped, or they feel that they're being sexually assaulted or something is happening to them that's not right, what should they do?
I would encourage them to report it, immediately, straight away, to bring it to the attention of a person who can assist them, to report it to the police. I mean, it's clear from, Queen Camilla's experience, this man was never dealt with, was never caught. That's the common experience of many women. The vast majority of these incidents are never reported, and the person goes about their business as normal, ready to harass the next woman.
Kathy, thank you for your time this evening. That's Kathy Larkman, National Policing Lead and Wales Coordinator of the Women's Rights Network, also a retired South Wales Police Superintendent. I mean, look, our wives and our daughters should be able, and our girlfriends, should be able to walk the streets and use public transport safely, right? And not be attacked or groped by people who think it's all right to do so. If you've got an experience on this, I'd love to get it on the air. 0344 499 1000 is the number. After the 6 o'clock news, Shamima Begum's ban from Britain is challenged by European judges. Here's a question. What should we do with her? This is Talk.
Libya has become a major transit route for refugees and migrants from sub-Saharan Africa. And many of them come through Libya dreaming of getting to the UK, particularly from Sudan, where there has been a civil war waging for the last 2 years. And those asylum seekers or economic migrants who make it from Sudan to the UK have a 99% chance of being given leave to remain. So I spent several hours talking to immigration chiefs here in Benghazi on the east side of Libya. The Libyan National Army has a very good grip on the immigration problem, albeit fighting against a huge crisis with limited resources. There is a very, very clear process of giving people proper health checks, the life-saving care that they need, and then working out where it is exactly that they've come from. Their message to the UK is that you are fueling this problem. You are effectively advertising a great new life for people from sub-Saharan Africa. They actually said, you know, what do you think happens when a guy from Sudan comes up through Libya and makes his way all the way to the UK and gets put in a luxurious hotel and provided with everything? And make no mistake, it is a perilous journey. We see it from the end point. We see the channel crossing as the dangerous bit. But actually where these journeys begin is in the hot desert. Many, many tens of kilometres have to be covered on foot by these migrants. And as many as 1 in 4 do not make it. That means bodies in the desert. The Libyan authorities are having to recover bodies in the desert. About the UK and how much awareness. Please understand the scale of what we are dealing with here with very, very...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
New Year's Eve evening, that's the thing. I'm Duncan Barkes, I'm here through until 7. This is Talk. I'm just wondering how many of you have opened a bottle yet. Have you opened something in the fridge? We've got your corkscrew primed. I'm now looking at people the other side of the glass here at Talk Towers. Anything open in there? No, you're quite a sober bunch so far. It is quite early, isn't it? I'm here through until 7. There's a load of stuff we've been chewing over. In a few moments' time, we're going to talk about Shamima Begum. You know her. She's had her attempt to come back to Britain revived. It's a story in a Sun newspaper. There's a challenge from European judges. This is someone who ran away to join Islamic State back in 2019. And there's a real possibility she could be back in this country. We'll get your thoughts on that and the thoughts from Will Geddes, security expert, in a few moments' time. But I need to go through some of the messages you've been good enough to send in on text and also WhatsApp as well. The text number is 87222. Start your message with the word talk. WhatsApp messages and voice notes, and also your calls coming to 0344 499 1000. We've been talking about who should be allowed to strike. This one here from Kate. Duncan, I don't think people who work in the utility industries like water or gas or electricity should be able to strike, because those are essential services. Thank you, Kate. Dave in Southport, this made me smile. Talking about what it is to be patriotic and this call for a bank holiday for England's first king. Dave says, England wasn't built on holidays, so taking a day off isn't patriotic. Good call. This is George talking about the tagging of illegal migrants. and indeed asylum seekers. Other countries appear to give illegal migrants very little compared to us. What is the minimum that a country is supposed to provide to an asylum seeker? Surely whatever that is should be what we provide. That would reduce the pull factor immediately, says George. I think I'm right in saying, I think we are obligated to provide asylum seekers with somewhere to stay / live. Elsewhere, this is Bill talking about ID cards. We were earlier. Well, not ID cards, but digital ID, because for the first time ever, a poll has come out where the majority of people oppose it as opposed to support it. And you will know that Keir Starmer, even though it wasn't in the Labour manifesto, announced plans for digital ID that we're all supposed to have. Bill says, I'm fully in favour of ID cards, but not digital ID. Why not just a plastic version of our NHS numbers? Nothing else is necessary. I'll do a couple more here. This is Fiona, a nurse in Suffolk. Now, you know I said earlier that I've never heard a story of someone dying from hiccups and having to go to A&E, because we've got this story about people going to A&E, and it turns out people have turned up over the years with hiccups. And I said, this is just absurd. Why would you do that? And I said, if I got it wrong, someone will prove me wrong. And it's Fiona, who's a nurse in Suffolk, who says hiccups lasting more than 38 hours can be a sign of a central nervous system problem, such as spinal injury, brain injury, meningitis. So under those circumstances, it could be a sign of a life-threatening condition. I've done enough talk radio over the years to know that when I go on and say, I think I'm right in saying this, but if I got it wrong, someone will tell me, that they always do. Fiona, a nurse in Suffolk, thank you. And this one here from Lisa in Staffordshire, talking about Reform UK. We heard earlier New Year's message from Nigel Farage asking you the question, what does 2026 hold for Reform UK? This one says, I think Labour know they'll lose the next election and are doing their best to set Reform up to fail. It won't be an easy first term for Reform, a lot of mess to sort out, but patience, bear with them. Let's see where this goes. Keep your messages coming in on the text. It's 87222. Start your message with the word talk. WhatsApps and calls and voice notes coming to 0344 499 1000. Now, I'm very keen to find out your opinion on this evening. I can't even believe that this government would be stupid enough to allow Shamima Begum back into this country, not given their poll ratings currently. However, I think the people who tend to make these decisions do live on an entirely different planet to you and I. Let me just give you some background here. Shamima Begum has had her attempt to come back to Britain revived by a challenge from European judges. Now, the European Court of Human Rights has asked Britain to justify, we have to justify our decision to strip the 26-year-old of her citizenship in 2019 after she travelled to Syria to join IS, Islamic State. The court's intervention was hailed by Begum's lawyers as unprecedented and an opportunity that could pave the way for a fresh legal battle between the Strasbourg court and the government. The European judges have asked the government whether it broke human rights and anti-trafficking laws by blocking her return to the UK, Begum's key legal argument. Begum was born and raised in Bethnal Green in East London before travelling to Syria in 2015 at the age of 15 to join IS alongside two friends from school. She became a child bride to a Dutch Islamic convert with whom she had 3 children, none of whom are still alive. We had a former Home Secretary, remember him? Sir Sajid Javid. He took away her British citizenship on the basis that she could also claim residency in Bangladesh to avoid becoming stateless. His decision was upheld by the Supreme Court, but lawyers for Begum, who is currently held in a detention camp in northeast Syria, lodged an appeal with the Strasbourg court. They argued that she could not have been stripped of her citizenship because she was the victim of grooming and trafficking. The court could reject the appeal by Begum's lawyers after considering the Home Office's response to its questions. So that's the background to this story. I'm asking you specifically tonight, there is a possibility, if this appeal works, that she could be back in the United Kingdom. What should happen to Shamima Begum is my question to you. 0344 499 1000. I'll give you a thought. I've heard the arguments for and against, one of which is she was only 15 at the time, and people do very stupid things at the age of 15. That's a start of a 10. It's not my view. I don't think she should be allowed anywhere near this country. Let's get a thought from Will Geddes, security expert. Hello, Will.
Hello, Duncan. Good evening.
Good evening. Once again, this particular issue raises its ugly head. What's your thought?
Oh, well, I don't think she should return to the UK. And I mean, there are so many different reasons for that, Duncan. And again, yet again, we are being bound by the handcuffs of the ECHR, the European Court of Human Rights. And I think maybe now is the time that we need to invoke Article 58, which is to remove ourselves from the ECHR, and for Parliament to raise the British Bill of Rights, which would obviously succeed that and give us more local power and control over these kind of issues rather than have them enforceable by the ECHR.
I just get this sense from the British public and anyone I talk to in the real world, the world I inhabit, which is I take the dog for a walk and have a pint afterwards in my local pub. I get the sense that they are just sick and tired of hearing stories like this where all they want is the government of their country, and I won't just have this hanging on the Labour government, the last government as well, the Conservative government, to do the right thing and go, look, this person did this, it shouldn't be allowed to happen, they're a danger to our country, our society, we don't want them back here. And yet, it seems like we have to adhere potentially to the decisions of an unelected organisation, which is what the ECHR is, and it's us as normal, law-abiding British people who end up going, all right, OK, well, no one else sees it like us, she can be allowed back in. It's preposterous.
It is preposterous. And, you know, we're in a situation yet again where, I mean, to a certain extent, Shamima Begum is the poster child for British nationals that left this country to willingly go and join the ranks of Islamic State, whether that be as a frontline fighter or whether it be in her support role. Certainly, there is a lot of information about Shamima Begum that has not come to public light for various different reasons. A lot of the acts and actions that she was involved in, including obviously the assistance in the enslavement of Yazidi women who were used as sex slaves by Islamic State, but a number of other factors that were involved. She was there for 4 years, Duncan. So
I read a report, Will, sorry to interrupt you, that she helped stitch people into suicide vests.
Indeed, yeah, absolutely. She not only helped stitch them into them, but she helped them construct them. She also, by her own admission, disclosed that she had seen headless or decapitated heads in bins, and it didn't really faze her. The problem that we have, Duncan, is that even if the ECHR tries to enforce this, and she comes back to the United Kingdom, there is very little evidence that could stand up in court because most of the information that's been passed were by confidential sources and intelligence sources that were obviously gathering intel locally. So to have any kind of evidence that could prosecute her for the atrocities, and there's no other way of putting it, Duncan, the atrocities that she committed when she was in Syria, working with Islamic State, and it wasn't just living, it was working there, would enable her to potentially go free and just add to yet the 45,000 plus subjects of interest that we already have in this country that are deemed a high risk.
Yeah, we've got enough to be worrying about. What's your take on this, Will? What's your punt? Do you think that we'll get our way? I mean, you and I and most of the viewers on Listen to Talk, which is this woman will not be allowed back in this country, or do you think ultimately Labour will just go, well, you know, let's give her a second chance?
Well, unfortunately, with Keir Starmer's current track record of allowing all sorts of terrorists to come in, and that includes former Islamic State leaders who are now stealing from us under, obviously, benefits and living in the United Kingdom, I don't have enormous amounts of trust in our government stopping her returning. So if the ECHR puts up any kind of resistance to this, there's every good chance she will return. But again, this is just another nail in the coffin of this useless government that we have currently presiding over us.
Will, pleasure to talk to you. Have a great New Year's Eve. Thank you for your time. That's Will Geddes, security expert. You're watching and listening to Talk. Tell me what should happen to Shamima Begum. You've heard what Will said. You know my view. I'll try and be kind. Let's just flip it around a little bit. Is there any reason that you can think of as to why we should give this young woman a second chance? 0344 499 1000 is the number. Joan's in Sunderland. Hello, Joan.
Hello. Nothing will happen to Shamima Begum because the way this government is, but in the Court of Human Rights, what will happen is she'll be returned to this country and she'll sue us for millions of pounds, saying that her citizenship was stripped from her illegally. She'll become famous like that Egyptian who has no damned right to be here, because all the lovies, Starmer and his crew, all these people who love the ECHR, will be celebrating. And we will be paying for the lawyers, we'll be paying other things like our security. This government and these lawyers do not care a bit about the people of this country. I am sick to death of hearing about the ECHR. It damn well wants burning.
Yeah, I mean, I think if, and it isn't if, it's not happening yet, if she were able to come back to Britain as a result of the ruling from the European Court of Human Rights, all that does is it adds greater strength to those people who believe we should come out of the European Convention of Human Rights, which of course we're part of, that therefore means the court has some jurisdiction over us here in the United Kingdom. I don't think this government's track record so far in the last year and a half particularly puts British people first. So it would not surprise me at all if Keir Starmer decided, well, the law's the law, and consequently Shamima Begum came back to this country. And then give it a couple of years, the BBC will have her hosting Strictly Come Dancing. Joan in Sunderland, thank you very much for your call. 0344 499 1000 is the number. I don't know where we go with this. Part of me just despairs and think it's inevitable that there'll be a ruling from the European Court of Human Rights who'll just go, you need to take her back. And we'll just go, oh, not surprised by that. I mean, depressing, but not surprised. My question to you, what should happen to Shamima Begum? 87222 on the text, start your message with the word talk, 0344 499 1000 for your calls. I've got a stack of messages here. Going to go through a few more of these, covering some of the things we've been talking about over the last couple of hours. This is Brian. He says, I'm listening to your programme. Regarding these illegals, all of the suggestions I've heard are useless, dealing with the symptoms as opposed to dealing with the cause. It really isn't difficult, and we have to get to grips with stopping further people arriving, first of all. Once that has been achieved, we then need to start deporting those who have already arrived illegally with no exceptions. Happy New Year to everyone at Talk. Same to you. Cheers, Brian. Elsewhere, this is Mark, who's in Hebburn, talking about his A&E experience, something else we're talking about this evening, as we hear that people have been turning up over the last 5 years and seeing doctors and nurses at A&E because they have a range of minor ailments, headaches, constipation, hiccups. I started off by going, what's the matter with these people? I mean, come on, just take some paracetamol. Though some people have made it quite clear they've got a headache that could lead to a brain hemorrhage, and maybe you should get it checked out. Keen for your thoughts on this and your A&E experience as we head into New Year's Eve 2025, when A&E will be remarkably busy. Mark says, I chopped my finger off and went to A&E. The reception put it down as a limb injury. I sat for 2 hours until I made a fuss. Then I was seen and my finger was stitched back until a bed was found for me. I could have lost my finger because of that delay. Blimey, how does... Well, I suppose it is a limb injury, but for me a limb injury is like, isn't that like spraining your ankle? Bashing your shoulder? Not losing your finger? I hope your finger's all right now, Mark. Elsewhere, this is Martin. I think any emergency services should be banned from striking, but there should be another means of making their concerns heard, as the system is currently not working. I have a sympathy with that view. I mean, I do think people who work in essential services, and I include doctors, nurses, paramedics, firemen, etc., shouldn't be able to strike. But of course, people do need an effective way of getting heard if they're not happy with their pay and working conditions. And one more here. This is Rigsby in Worthing. Hello, Riggs. Dunks. In 2026, I'm looking forward to Starmer getting the boot. Obviously, any replacement from the left will likely be even worse. However, I will at least receive 20 quid from a couple of my lefty friends, Liz and Alfie. Back when Starmer came to power, I took a bet with them, whereby I bet that Starmer would not do 4 years. They now regret taking that bet. That is interesting. So Nigel Farage, the Reform UK leader, said a few months ago now, he doesn't think that Starmer, or the Labour government rather, will last until 2029. He was of the view there will be an election in 2027. And that's what he's gearing up for. That's what he said. His party is preparing for a general election in 2027. And when he was probed further about it, he said it's all about the economy. He said the economy is going to tank and Labour will be left with no choice than to call an election by 2027. So it's interesting you've got that bet. I think you're set to win it. I don't think Starmer will last another year, personally, but what comes after him, I'm not entirely sure, would be better. I mean, look at the options. I mean, there's Wes Streeting, who, well, at least he's a better communicator. And there's Angela Rayner, who, I mean, Angela Rayner potentially could be the next Labour leader. It's quite frightening. I think she's a good communicator. She certainly connects with people, but she's a proper old school, union-driven left-winger. And I don't think we need any more of that in this country. The rumour that I've heard in Westminster, well, it's not really a rumour. I was talking about this on Talk about 6 weeks ago, and then about a week after that, it was confirmed. The rumour is she's got a book coming out. Well, that has been confirmed. Her life story. It's all about her life story and her rise throughout politics. And, you know, she's done remarkably well for herself. But she needs to get the book out. She needs to go on what's known as the literary festival circuit, doing the In Conversation with Angela Rayner to flog her book, get enough money in the bank, pay off all of the costs for the stamp duty and anything else she needs to do over that flat affair. And then once she's done that, she's in a position to run for leader. So I will have a bet with you at the moment that by, where are we now? New Year's Eve 2025, this time next year, Rayner will be Labour leader. That's where I'm putting my money. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
I'm Duncan Barkes, this is Talk. We're going to talk about the weather in a few moments' time, not because we're British, because that's what we always talk about, but with good reason, because there's some weird weather stuff going on over the next couple of days that you need to know about. But just a few more messages here. This one from Jan in Newcastle, talking about A&E and GP appointment access, saying, I'm waiting 4.5 weeks for a GP appointment. It's not life-threatening, so I will just wait. People who go to A&E for hiccups or constipation would go to their doctors if they could get an appointment. However, for both those problems, I wouldn't go to either. I would go to my pharmacy. Staff at A&E should be able to tell people to do exactly that and not let them stay in A&E, says Jan in Newcastle. You see, I have a degree of sympathy with people who are at A&E. If you're a doctor or a nurse, right, and someone says, I've got a headache, and you might be going, just go home and take paracetamol. But they will be absolutely petrified that there might be something that's causing that headache that the patient's not aware of, so they have to check them out. because otherwise there'll be hell to pay later down the line if they haven't diagnosed something. So I have a degree of sympathy with it, but I also find myself thinking, and I have seen it firsthand, being at A&E, you know, at 9 o'clock on a Sunday morning once when my daughter went for a tumble when she was a kid, and various other times, you know, when she was 2 years old and throwing up like that creature in the Exorcist film. You know, I mean, there are people in there, right? And it was just like, you shouldn't be there. All right, clearly you're drunk, just go home. So, I mean, I think it's tough. I think it's really tough if you staff an accident and emergency department. You know, you have to go through the motions of pretending that you care about some of these people who clearly should not be there. This is Becca talking about industrial action. No one should be allowed to strike. It is holding people who can't do anything about the wages or work conditions to ransom. I think I agree. I think I do agree with that, because it's all, if it's the public sector, all right, so you're talking about, you know, teachers and you're talking about doctors and stuff. Ultimately, it's us as taxpayers who suffer, and it's not our fault. You know, we pay these politicians vast amounts of money, and a lot of people in the NHS, for example, incredible amounts of money to run things. You expect them to sort out the industrial action, don't you? It's not a big ask, you know. If you're an NHS chief on like 180 grand a year, just sort it out. It's what I pay you to do, okay? But ultimately, they can't do it, and you and I, as taxpayers, not only have to pick up the tab and they give them more pay and, you know, pay increases, but also we suffer when they strike. And one more here from Martin, who says, I've been self-employed most of my working life. Your earlier guest, James Matthewson, should try that. No work, no pay. The public sector are wrapped in cotton wool and have no idea how the real world works. I've often said this. One of the quickest cures for illness is being a freelancer. 0344 499 1000 for your calls. A lot of nodding going on next door. For your calls, your WhatsApp messages, and also your voice notes. You can text the word talk in your comments to 87222. Let's talk about the weather. There's a good reason for this. A yellow warning is in place from midnight on New Year's Day until noon on the 2nd of January, and covers a massive chunk of England and Wales from Chester and Greater Manchester, so kind of like up here, down to London and Kent. Down there. That's about right, isn't it? As much of 5 centimetres of snow is expected in some parts, with icy patches also likely. It's predicted this will cause travel disruption, because you know what it's like. We get a bit of snow and ice and just things stop working. Separate yellow warnings are also in place for Northern Ireland between midnight on Thursday and 10 o'clock Friday morning, and in northern Scotland between 6 a.m. on Thursday and the end of Friday. Patches of freezing fog are also possible in the west and northwest of England, the National Weather Service said, as it advised those travelling early on New Year's Day to take care. So going to any of those parts of the UK tomorrow morning, you need to have your wits about you. Let's get more on this. Joe Wheeler is a meteorologist from Square Raindrop and joins us. Hello, Joe.
Hello. Yes, it's all looking fairly chilly, isn't it, for the new year? We were waiting for a white Christmas. It never happened. But now it looks like we will see some snow at some point. And if we don't actually see some snow, it is going to be very, very cold at least. Now, a few people have said to me over the last couple of days, oh gosh, it's chilly, isn't it?
It is
chilly. And the answer is, well, it is, yes. But it's going to get worse, because what we've got is an area of high pressure out towards the west of us and low pressure out towards the east of us. And so with the winds going the right way around both of those systems, it's forcing this northerly wind, and it's bringing in an Arctic air mass. Now, it's not actually here yet. So even though we saw temperatures of like -9 last night, it's going to get colder still. The cold air isn't really with us yet. And that is a bit of an issue, because of course it's New Year's Eve tonight.
Yeah.
People will be out, they'll be celebrating, and some of them will be hoping to go home tomorrow. And travelling is not ideal when you've got temperatures like this, and you've got this very, very cold air mass. So what we see overnight is this area of rain and sleet working its way southwards. This isn't major in itself, but what it is doing is it's pulling in this very, very cold air, and that will pull its way down the country through tomorrow. And anything that falls through that is likely to be falling as sleet or snow, particularly at elevation, of course, but also at lower levels too. So there is the potential there for blizzards over parts of Scotland, because along with this cold air, we'll also see some very strong winds. And this is all working its way southward. It will be coastal areas that see the worst of the wet weather. Inland areas should stay mostly dry and bright. And also where the winds fall light, we'll see some freezing fog. In fact, even now, in the south, we've got visibility down to 50 metres in some places and temperatures well below zero. So the cold air is with us. There's colder air yet to come. And then how long it stays, well, that's a bit of a conundrum, even for us forecasters, because some models want us to give way to a mobile westerly, which will bring in milder conditions. Others want to maintain this northerly and these very cold conditions.
Fascinating to get your expertise, thank you. And actually, I can echo part of what you said there. I mean, this radio station is based in London Bridge. I live in the wilds of Sussex. I was driving up through the countryside earlier this afternoon, and already there was a bit of freezing fog knocking around, and visibility was pretty minimal. So on the basis of what you say, I mean, quite selfishly, my journey home might be a little bit chaotic by the sounds of it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I was out driving earlier and already temperatures were below freezing and it was a bit skiddy on the roads. Hopefully many places have been gritted by now. People are ready for this. This cold spell has been in the offing for quite some time. How long it will stay, as I say, we're not entirely sure at the moment, but certainly be prepared with all those cold weather things that you do have, you know, scrapers for your car, anti-ice, all the rest of it. And just be careful when you're out there on the roads.
Joe, thank you for your time this evening. Have a great New Year's Eve. Stay safe, stay warm. That's Joe Wheeler, a meteorologist from Square Raindrop. And really a message there is to just keep an eye on the various weather warnings that will be issued as time goes on. It is going to be icy. There's the potential of snow. And particularly tomorrow morning, if you're thinking of driving somewhere, you know, for New Year's Day lunch or coming back from somewhere, do check before you travel, particularly of public transport, because in this country, we ain't great at dealing with cold weather and ice and snow when we talk about the trains or indeed the buses. It's just turned 6:30. I'm Duncan Barkes and this is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Duncan Barkes here through until 7. A reminder, Andre Walker here from 10 o'clock tonight. If you want to say goodbye to 2025 and hello to 2026. That's right, isn't it? You can do it with Andre from 10 o'clock tonight here at Talk. Now, it is New Year's Eve, and I wanted just to bring in something here regarding the best place that you celebrated New Year's Eve. I've had some interesting New Year's Eves in the past. Let me just explain a couple of them, just to give you a sense. I remember in 1999, do you remember this thing called Y2K? When they thought all of the computers were going to go wrong and planes were going to be falling out of the sky because we went from 1999 into the year 2000. Do you remember that Y2K? A friend of ours thought it would be brilliant if we went to a pub that had big TV screens and was showing the new year coming in various other parts of the world, right? And this was, I think it was the pub called the Broadwater Pub in Worthing in West Sussex. And we went there. It wasn't a great pub. I mean, it's still in existence. It's all right, but it's not the world's greatest boozer. And it's normally a sporting pub, so it has massive big screens. And, you know, they used to show football and stuff. But what they were doing is they would have like, it's just turned midnight in Auckland, New Zealand. And the theory was that if midnight appeared in Auckland, New Zealand before midnight in the United Kingdom and no planes had fallen out of the sky, they probably wouldn't in this country. So that was one, that was curious. I spent a New Year's Eve in a bizarre village in Oxfordshire. Some friends of a friend had a pub and I thought it was going to be great. Proper old school pub. It's just a bit weird. I'm not going to name the place because I might upset people, but there was a village pond, and everyone went down there to kind of see in the new year. So the clock struck 12, this village in Oxfordshire, and I was looking around, I thought, I think they still burn witches here. That was a bit weird, but my best ever New Year was Edinburgh, and this goes back to probably the late 1990s, and I did a ceilidh in Edinburgh at what used to be the Caledonian Brewery. That was good. Lots of beer, haggis, neeps and tatties, and plenty of hugs from some quite fit Scottish people. I can say that still, can't I? Then, right, off Princes Street, there was a free gig. And this was immense. They had, I remember it to this day because I have a soft spot for Scottish bands of the 80s and 90s. Deacon Blue, Texas and Simple Minds. Doesn't get much better, does it? All doing a free gig off Princes Street in Edinburgh. That was, I mean, the hangover for that lasted until the 5th of January. So I want to get into this whole idea of where's the best place to celebrate New Year's Eve. And who better than to talk about this than Andy Preston, political commentator, but also former independent mayor of Middlesbrough. Andy, good evening.
Hi, Duncan. Hi. Happy New Year. Are we allowed to say it this early?
I think we can, and it's good of you to give up some time in your New Year's Eve. Now, I'm kind of expecting you to fly the flag for Middlesbrough as a place to spend New Year's Eve. What can you tell us?
Well, my best New Year's ever, and like you, I've been to 100 different places, and I can describe them in a minute, but the best time to me was when I was 14 to 17. I'd be at home in Middlesbrough. We did a thing there called first footing. I don't know whether you've ever done that.
I'm half Scottish, mate. I'm
right.
born and bred first footer.
Yeah. So it's not as common in England, though, is it? It definitely is up in the northeast. And what happens at midnight, you'll go and visit your neighbours, and there's a tradition where someone has to cross the threshold of the house after midnight.
Yeah.
And it's supposed to be a tall, dark-haired man. That's the idea, to bring luck. And he's meant to carry a bit of coal and perhaps a bit of fruit. And you know what? They were gentle times. They were like times when we would have a drink, but it was neighbourly.
Yep.
And to me, they were the best New Year's. The worst ones to me are the ones where everyone's forced to have fun. Everyone thinks, oh my word, we're under pressure now to have the best night of the year, because it rarely is. It rarely is. But you know what? I have been everywhere, and I've had a time in County Durham, rural County Durham, in a farmhouse with friends with a power cut. That was totally weird. All the lights and power went off at about 9 p.m.
What is that? Just a run-of-the-mill power cut then? Is that what happened?
There were strong winds, middle of nowhere. The power went off. It's like, what do we do? We could literally, after about 10 minutes, you kind of see each other and wake out in the darkness. We once hired this huge, big country hall over in North Wales, a place called Wigfair Hall. That was fun, a big bunch of us. We had dancing and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I've been in the Alps too, and I've done all these things, but the best times for me are the family times, the gentle visit your neighbours, and not forced to have fun. There's a lot of pressure at New Year.
There is a lot of pressure, isn't there? And it's kind of interesting. I've got to the stage in my life, and I describe myself as a middle-aged man. I mean, I'm 53, or I don't know if that's middle-aged, but I feel it. And
You look middle-aged, Duncan.
Thank you. Gone are the days where I want to go out and party. One, I haven't got the patience. I was saying this to the team earlier. Two, it's normally when the amateurs come out. And what I mean by that is people who, after their 2 pints of beer, which they normally have when they're getting a bit excitable, when they're on their third and fourth pint, frankly, they just be tasered to save us all a favour. I just can't be doing with it, and I can't be doing with paying extra to get into a pub or restaurant or an overinflated menu. I've had some great times in the past where I've caroused and partied and really enjoyed it. I mentioned Edinburgh earlier, which is just a cracking place to see in the new year. But I think there is a lot of pressure at this time of year for people to do stuff. But I also get the sense that some people increasingly are just going, do you know what? It's not for me. I'm going to go to bed at 10:30.
Totally. And actually, Edinburgh, I lived in Edinburgh for some time, and I loved it. And New Year there was a little bit bigger than, say, somewhere like Middlesbrough. But it wasn't totally different. But what was different, Duncan, was it was more of a touristy thing. And what's happened now in England over the last 20 years, the big English cities, London, Liverpool, Manchester and others, they're cottoning on that if they put on a big extravaganza, bands, fireworks, they get the tourists in. So it's becoming something, instead of being a family thing with your neighbours, it's becoming a mass participation thing. New Year has definitely changed all over Britain in the last 25 years. And I don't like it. I'm going out tonight. I'm in London right now. I'm sat in Notting Hill.
Yeah.
And I'm going out into the West End. My 17-year-old is out.
Yeah.
But I'm going to be in bed by 10:30.
So, I mean, that's interesting. So what do you plan to do in Notting Hill over the next few hours? Because I'll tell you what, the price of a pint compared to Middlesbrough, mate, it's going to be eye-watering for you.
Well, actually, I'd rather be in Middlesbrough. I've got to be up at 5 a.m. tomorrow. I've got something on to do on a rival channel at 5 and 6 a.m.
Right.
But my 17-year-old's out with some mates. He's supposed to be wandering around having a look. He's doubtless trying to find his way into a pub somewhere.
Yeah.
But I'm going to bed at 10:30. He said he'll be back at 1, so I'll be up all, I guess, in bed, but worrying where he is and what he's up to.
Yeah.
But I'm going to have a nice family meal. I'm just going to enjoy myself, take it easy. As you said, it's amateur hour. The people who don't normally do anything crazy, they feel forced to do something a bit more dangerous, have a third or fourth pint, and everyone needs to chill and just enjoy it.
Yeah, I've enjoyed our conversation, Andy. Thanks for finding the time on this New Year's Eve. Appreciate it. That's Andy Preston, political commentator and the former independent mayor of Middlesbrough. If you've got some plans and if you've got a moment, you're doing something this evening that might be just termed a little bit weird or whatever, I don't mean in a dodgy way, do let me know. 87222 on the text. Start your message with the word talk. You can also WhatsApp us and voice note us 0344 499 1000. And where is the best place you've ever celebrated New Year? And something we were talking about in the talk office earlier before I waddled in here at 4 o'clock, which seems like an age ago, was this idea that there's so much pressure at this time of year about kind of like, oh, you know, the calendar flips over, January 2026 is there, and things need to change, or they should be changing. I mean, I get sick and tired of the adverts that pop up on my Insta feed, right, for all kinds of things. But essentially the message is, ooh, new year, new you. It's like, no thanks. And it's just something about just because it's a different day, all of a sudden you should start wearing different clothes, looking a different way, you know, and all of this. And I was saying earlier to the team, I can't think of anything worse than making life-changing decisions. Well, not life-changing, but changing your life in some way in January. Particularly when we have, and I don't know if anyone's going to do it, maybe you're going to do it, dry January. Why on earth would you inflict dry January on yourself during a month which is the worst month in the calendar? For all kinds of reasons. Your credit card bill comes in. There's a good chance that you got paid a lot earlier in December. So your payday in January is going to seem a lot further away than it would normally be. It is blooming cold. I mean, we've just spoken to a weather person about how cold it's going to be over the next couple of days with the ice and the snow and all of that kind of stuff. It's blooming chilly. It's dark. It's dark and cold. All right? It's just a gloomy time of the year, and someone thought it was a really good idea to go, do you know what you should do? Is just give up the booze for January. If there's a month you need a drink, it is for the month of January. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
I'm Duncan Barkes, this is Talk. I'm here through until 7 after 7. We have Talk Women, and after 10 tonight you can say goodbye to 2025 and hello to 2026 with Andre Walker. We've been talking about Reform UK. Nigel Farage, the leader of Reform UK, released his New Year's message earlier, and just a warning, other political leaders will do it inside the next few hours, so either embrace it if you're that way inclined or do your best to avoid it. But one of the things that we've been talking about is what does the future look like for Reform UK UK in 2026. Here's a voice note from Anna.
Good evening, Anna. Sorry, I've just jumped in at this conversation, so I'm sorry if I repeat myself. Reform UK will get in at the next election, and I think they will have 4 years, no more, because I think the country has lurched so far to the right because of the woke, liberal, Marxist nut jobs that have been in since 1997. I include Boris's government in that. People have been pushed, and I don't think Reform UK will be right-wing enough. I think someone else will come out of the shadows, and I think due to Reform trying to balance the country in genuine interests of the British people, I think they'll disappoint us and will put someone far more right-wing in after that. Thank you, bye-bye.
Anna, thank you for your message. 0344 499 1000 for yours. Going to talk to Phil in Gwent in a second, but I just need to do some of these text messages coming in. Catherine in Cardiff, thank you very much for your kind comments. Good to know you're enjoying the show. Mark in Coventry says, Duncan, I wish the government would go on strike. The country may well run better without them. Yeah, you see, that's not a bad idea, is it? We could do it. We know what needs to happen. This one here, no name to it, but it says, Duncan, what about David Lammy as the next Prime Minister? I'm asking this with my tongue firmly in my cheek. I'm answering this with this noise. That's my head hitting the wall. Cheers for that. Elsewhere, this is Gary. I don't see why we live in fear of decisions by the ECHR. We are a sovereign nation, so we can just pass a law that says that the UK government reserves the right to overrule any decision by the ECHR if it is deemed by us to be in the national interest to do so. Job done. What can they do? All we would then need is a government with the will to do it. Well, Gary, I think you've hit the nail on the head. We don't have it, and there's no political will. And we have a Prime Minister at the moment who is obsessed by the law. It's the law. So it's not going to happen, is it? And you've also got a cabinet who would be so fearful of doing anything along those lines. But I appreciate your message. A couple more here. This one from Darren in South Wales. If the ECHR says she is allowed back, and of course I think they will, says Darren, this useless government will definitely not go against them. Happy New Year. Thank you, Daz. And Angie says, this is about Shamima Begum. She was 15 when she left. The age of criminal responsibility is 10 years of age. Why would we let this monster back in? She'd either need to go into prison for her actions or live in a safe house. Either way, it'll be costing us a fortune, although Kia will probably allow her back. Angie, thank you. This is Phil, who's in Gwent. You call her. Hello, Phil.
Oh, good afternoon, Duncan.
How's it going?
Good, and yourself?
Yeah, not too shabby. What would you like to say, sir?
Well, first of all, I'd say Happy New Year to you.
And you too.
Obviously, yes, thank you. Yeah, well, there's 2 points I'd like to make. Is obviously one about Shamima Begum.
Yeah.
I don't think she should return to this country. She's been stripped of her citizenship by the Home Secretary, the previous Home Secretary in the Conservative government. So I don't see how she got any rights to be here.
Well, what her campaigners are saying is that when she was stripped of her citizenship by a former Conservative Home Secretary, and he said, this is Sajid Javid, that this could happen on the basis that she could also claim residency in Bangladesh. They're saying that they did not consider the fact that she may well have been trafficked, and consequently that decision doesn't necessarily stand up. She could have been groomed, she could have been a victim of grooming or trafficking, which I find hard to believe because you can see pictures of her online of her and her two school chums strolling out of Bethnal Green and heading to Syria. But that's the argument they're using.
Yeah, well, we hear about people being trafficked into this country, but I don't think I hear of people being trafficked out of the country, do you?
I think you make a good point. Phil, going to move it on. A new caller to talk, so thank you. Don't leave it too long till you call again. This is Dave in London. Hello, Dave.
Hi, Duncan. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. What would you like to say, mate?
I don't think... I'm not convinced that reform will make it to the next government. I think there's plenty of little things yet that Starmer can do to thwart it. I think Starmer just believes he has the right to power now and in the future, and I don't think he sees all this other stuff going on that we talk about on these channels. But I think reform will.
Can I interrupt you for a second? I think he's fully aware of many of the views that people have on stations like Talk, but I think fundamentally he disagrees with them, and fundamentally I think he's arrogant enough to do what he thinks is right in his mind. I don't think the views of you or I matter to our Prime Minister.
Yeah, totally. It is arrogance. And I think he just thinks, yeah, you know, that's a load of minority right-wing voices that all watch, you know, that are all part of an adolescence film or something. And he just steamrolls over it. And I think that's what he'll do. But the big problem is, although these new media channels are getting more traction, the BBC and everybody else will throw everything they've got at it to make sure reform don't get in. They'll change, the government will change borders, change elections, gerrymander with 15-year-olds with the vote and all this kind of
you're
stuff.
making a good point. I mean, you can argue, if you're a cynical old political hack like me, you can argue the only reason that Labour want votes for 16-year-olds is that there's a good chance that 16-year-olds may well vote for them, though of course that potentially could bite them on the backside, because it does appear that the Green Party, who are also disturbingly left-wing, may well benefit from votes for 16. But I think you're absolutely right. I think the government do have the tools, if necessary, to make it incredibly difficult for Reform UK to get into government. And Nigel Farage will have you believe that already they're doing certain things to stop the rise of reform. And he talked about it in his New Year's message when he spoke about elections being cancelled. You know, the mayoral elections that were due to take place in 2026 aren't happening in places like Kent or Essex or East or West Sussex, places where, you look at any of the polling, Reform UK would have won. There would have been Reform UK mayors in all of those areas. So you can argue that Labour are doing whatever they can to stop the rise of reform. Dave, great call. We're going to move it on. Maggie's in Devon. Hello, Maggie.
Hello there.
What would you like to say?
Can I put my sound up, or do I have to turn it down while I'm talking to you?
You sound perfectly all right to me.
That's perfect. Well, I've got to say, first of all, what an utter gentleman you are. I absolutely adore you. You're a lovely person, and I hope you're permanently on the team.
You're a very kind lady. Thank you. I'll take that. I'll take that with 10 minutes left of the show to go.
Oh, that's all right. Well, I'll quickly go through what I've got to say then. Begum and that El Fatah, horrible people, vicious, cruel, vile people. They surely can't be allowed back in this country. No, they should have to pay their price wherever they are now.
Well, Maggie, I'm sorry to break it to you. El Fatah's already here.
No. When did he come in? I should have been at the airport.
He came in on Boxing Day. Would you have stopped him?
Oh yeah, if I'd known he was there, I would have been there to try and stop it. Absolutely disgraceful. What the hell's happening to this country, Duncan?
I wish I could answer it. I wrote a piece for the Daily Express newspaper. And what day is it today? It's Wednesday, isn't it? On Monday, talking about how I feel there is a body of evidence that shows that the Labour Party is rewiring this country in a way that is not going to look good. And I talked about the mayoral elections being cancelled. I talked about the rise of facial recognition technology. I talked about digital ID cards. And I talked about David Lammy, who wants to scrap trial by jury for many, many crimes. If you start stitching all of that together, you start to actually get a picture which is quite bleak about where this country is heading, and it's not what it used to be like, and it fills me with fear, Maggie.
It fills me with fear too. I think what is going to happen next? I'm very afraid. The dream for me, and most of us, I would think, all of us in fact, that in 2026, maybe the 2nd of January would be quite nice if we could get rid of this appalling government and this man that is absolutely annihilating everyone. Does he also realise, Duncan, that these people that are coming into this country and causing all this trouble, you know, does he realise also he's against everybody that's against the Jews and everything else? And here he is now allowing that thing back in this country who hates the Jews. His own wife and children are Jews. Isn't he worried about them at all?
I have quite a clear position on immigration. I don't have a massive issue with immigration. If people come to this country legally, I believe we need people from other countries in the social care sector and the NHS. I think that's the case. Where I have a massive beef is when we talk about illegal migration, chiefly who enter this country, people who enter this country across the channel in small boats, who we don't know who's coming here, and we don't know what their beliefs and values are. But I think we can say there's an increasing body of evidence that they're completely at odds with this country and how we behave and the things we believe and the difference between right and wrong. Because all you have to do is look at various news stories over the last 6 months to see that people who have come here illegally carry out crimes against people in this country. And if you're going to strip it down, they have a set of values completely at odds with ours. And I don't think that's been challenged. I don't think the politicians in charge really understand it. It's far too easy for them just to go, well, you would say that because you're a bit racist. And unless Keir Starmer and his government get a grip on it, you know, I think our country is going to revolt at some point. I'm not encouraging it, and any kind of revolution needs to be peaceful. But people, when I talk to them, they've just had enough. Maggie, thank you for your kind comments. So I'm only going to move it on so I can get more callers on. This is Georgina. Good evening.
Good evening, Duncan, and a very happy Hogmanay to you.
Hogmanay,
I rang up with regard to our economy. I am very worried about our economy, and I'll tell you for why. In layman's terms, I'm not a politician. No. I think that the money that we're giving in our taxes, we don't mind paying our taxes, and we don't mind the taxes increasing as long as we can see what we're getting for our money. And at the moment, we are getting nothing. Money that should go into our economy to make our infrastructure better and stronger, thus making our economy grow, is not happening. It's going on other things. It's going on illegal migration. It's going on housing and clothing and looking after these people. It's going on net zero, which is not going to do us any good at the moment. You know, things that are important to this country are not being done. Our roads, we can't drive on our roads, Duncan. They're in a disgraceful state.
No, you make some interesting points, and I mean, it's not just where our tax money is being spent. And you know, I know people who work in, and I'm going to mention the public sector again because it's so relevant. You know, who work in the NHS, who work in the civil service, and I mean the amount of waste that happens, and I've seen it. I've worked in the NHS for about a year, doing some political work, and the waste is extraordinary. But it's not just the waste. We have got a government that's been in place since July 2024 that has created a climate that is so anti-business that the private sector and entrepreneurs have had enough. And if you want the economy to be buoyant, and if you want more money available to pump into stuff like education and like the NHS or whatever, the best way of doing it is allowing business to prosper. They grow, they employ more people have money to spend, the circle completes itself and everyone should be happy. But for the life of me, I can't understand why Rachel Reeves, who needs all the help she can get when it comes to growth, I mean, you know, when she became Chancellor, she was going, oh, well, one of my missions is growth. It's not happening, love, is it? You know, she's actually put in so many measures that are anti-growth, and you just think either she is massively thick, and I'm sorry to say, I'm not saying that because she's a woman, but it's just her track record speaks for herself, massively thick, or there's something in the Labour DNA which means, oh, we don't like big business, the only thing big business is good for is for us to charge them more. And I just don't get it. But it's interesting that your view that the economy is the most important issue in 2026 tallies up with this YouGov poll we've been talking about over the last few hours, because I believe the economy drives absolutely everything, doesn't it?
You are absolutely spot on. Without a strong economy, this country is finished. We're taking everything out, Duncan, and we're putting nothing back. We need to invest in small businesses. We need to get them going, get them up off their knees. The Labour government has made small businesses financially toxic. It's not right. They can't grow. And without the growth of small businesses, our economy won't grow, it will die, and that's what's happening, and it's there for all to see. The whole of the country is screaming out to the government.
And it's not just that, Georgina, everything you said there is absolutely spot on, but the thing that's not being talked about enough is our debt interest alone stands...
we can't afford the payment. We can't afford the repayment.
£100 billion a year we pay currently. In fact, I think it's over that now. It's about 105 billion quid a year. We pay in debt interest alone. That's the interest we pay on the money that we've borrowed. And no politician, well, no, very few politicians will tell you that because they think, oh, people don't understand it or whatever. But this is coming down the tracks. And the more we borrow to spend, that figure's going to go up and up and up and up. And people like you and I say this with respect, probably won't be on the planet in 20 or 30 years' time, right?
No.
But it'll be our kids and grandkids who potentially inherit such a trashed economy that this country could end up as a third world country, because that's the way it's heading unless